Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I know you guys have all been requesting this Harry Potter ranking for quite some time, and we finally did it. We watched every single one of them for this podcast. I had to bring in the cavalry for this one. So this is a very special guest. I'm very excited to have him on. He is such a cool dude. He is one of the most knowledgeable people about the cinema that I know. I've worked with him a lot over these last, I don't know. How long have I known you? Like last 3-4 years or so?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 3-4 years. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's wild how time flies. But here he is back on YouTube, Jose Pelino. Jose, how are you?
I am good, Zach. You're about to make me cry. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me. How's everything? How you doing?
You know, I'm coping. You know, it's a weird time right now, but you know, I'm glad I have, you know, all this free time, you know, to kind of like
watch all the Harry Potter movies again.
Well, watch all the Harry Potters, yeah, and
Absolutely.
like, you know, work on new projects and new avenues and all that stuff. But that's pretty much the video we're doing today, guys. Yeah, this is the top, there's only 10 of them, so we're gonna be ranking the Harry Potter films. But before we get into like the rankings, why don't you go ahead and like tell the audience that might not know you a little bit more about yourself?
Cool. Yeah. Well, hey everyone. My name is Jose Pelino. I am a friend of Zack's. We have worked together, collaborated on movie knowledge, and just had fun arguments about movies back and forth. A really good friend, fantastic guy, hell of an actor. I have my own YouTube channel, Jose G. Pelino, where I kind of went from doing a lot of these Blu-ray documents, sort of like, you know, unboxing and let's see what's inside the movie. And then I drifted away from that. I really have been focusing lately on essentially, you know, trying to become a movie pundit of some sort of, you know, sort of communicating and talking about film. So, I mean, I'm like Zach. I'm trying to dip my fingers into as many things as I can. So I'm doing the YouTube, and then I started doing Twitch, but I haven't done that as much. And then trying to do personal film projects on the side. So, you know, trying to do as much as I can. But in general, that's me. Movies is life, period.
Oh, yeah. Amen, brother. Yeah. And you mentioned your own channel. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to his channel down in the description box below. Just as an example, like he has great content as well. If you guys thought my collection in my video was pretty extensive, wait until you see Jose's, because that is some good stuff, man. You know, like, man.
Obsessive.
You know, it's
a collection for sure.
We can't stop, you know. It's just it's a good addiction to have, you know. It's the best I could say.
It's a great addiction. I have no shame.
Not at all. You know, like digital media is awesome, but like having the hard copy is just like you don't have to worry about like the buffering on the internet or anything like that.
It's also, there's something really, you know, the other thing about physical media that's really like attractive in this sort of day and age is because there is so much of this digital, you know, it's very like, yeah, just download it and go for it. But I think when you go out of your way, like, you know, especially somebody like in my case where I'm like, I have 4 different editions of the complete Harry Potter collection. It's because I like having the Hogwarts Wizard collection. I like having the individual 8-film collection, the Target exclusive, you know, sort of house collection, like all of that stuff. There is something that adds to not only your viewing experience, but then to your collection as well, where you can say like, hey, like I really appreciate the cinema and I really appreciate the artwork or the box art or whatever, even the disc design. And then you're like, cool, like it's part of my life forever. I can forget my password for my Voodoo tomorrow, but I can always pop in this Blu-ray for Harry Potter, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point, man. You know, digital media is really cool. And like a lot of the big movies that are coming out this year especially have been like, you know, a lot of digital media. Like, I mean, for crying out loud, we just got Mulan on Disney Plus with Premier Access, you know, it's like, but to me, like, I agree. There's nothing like having like, you know, the hard copy of like, I don't want to pull one out right now, but it's like having the hard copy of those Harry Potter films is just like, it's awesome. You know, it just makes me feel good. You know, and it takes me back to childhood.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a brilliant segue into what we're about to talk about. The 10 Harry Potter films, we're about to rank them for you right now. To be honest, I mean, this is I know I've like talked up Marvel a lot and it's great, but this is probably my favorite movie franchise ever. this dates back to my childhood. Like, it's when I was a kid, it was either you grew up with Harry Potter or you grew up with Star Wars. I was a Harry Potter kid all the way.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think for me, for me it was always both. But there is because you're right, Marvel. It's like now we're all into Marvel, but yeah, like growing up, it was like, what are your franchises? And you could even throw in there Lord of the Rings if you wanted. But it was always like, but that one just felt a little bit sort of like too complicated, as you were kind of growing up. But yeah, Star Wars and Harry Potter. But yeah, Harry Potter. I mean, I saw the first film in Venezuela, where I'm from, and then I saw every other film here in the U.S. So when we came to the U.S. Around like a year later was when this Chamber of Secrets was released, and then that was my first Harry Potter film in like American cinema, and I already spoke English by that point, but it was like, whoa, here we go. And then all the sort of films followed after that, and then including the Fantastic Beasts movies. So just now it's like we've seen Marvel, but nothing holds to watching all of the Harry Potter films and seeing where the franchise is going at this point.
Yeah, it's just to see where it's gone, like, from Sorcerer's Stone all the way to Crimes of Grindelwald. It's just like seeing like all these movies is just, I mean, the books are awesome. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, the books are better. They left out a lot in the movies. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot in our rankings. But like, to me, it's like, books are cool. And like, I grew up reading the books. I remember my elementary school library. Always the top book in that library. I remember specifically it was Order of the Phoenix because it was the longest book in the entire franchise. And a lot of my friends were not necessarily Harry Potter fans, admittedly, but a lot of them were like, I want to make sure I read this book that way. Like, I want to say I read 820 pages, and I'm like, it's all about the wizardry, like but I mean, I might be getting
even saying into that, I mean, the story that I always kind of tell is that what I would do is that I would read every book before the next movie would come out. That was like my thing. I would always just be like, loner kid, nerdy kid in high school. I was like, I'm just reading the books and then waiting until the new one. I even remember so much so that when Half-Blood Prince was coming out, you couldn't find the book anywhere. And the only copy that I still own this copy, the only copy of Half-Blood Prince that I have is an airport big text copy that my mom found because she was doing like a travel thing. She found it and she was like, hey, here's Half-Blood Prince. And it's shorter than the rest and it has big text because, it's a smaller book. Mm-hmm. And I love it because it has that story, but I just like, again, like any of these things that we're sort of now used to, when the next Harry Potter movie was coming out, it had this incredible retroactive effect into the books where it was like, cool, you're always like one step ahead. Whereas in like, if we wanted to say with Marvel, sometimes it feels like, well, what story arc do I read to possibly maybe connect it to the thing? It's kind of like, well, you can read the book, and kind of go from there. But it's really neat.
Yeah, that's always like, I don't want to say it's like a trouble with the Marvel films, like, because I know they're source material, but like, for example, like say you have I don't know, like a Captain Marvel, for example, like we don't know like what Captain Marvel story the original like movie is going to be based on, but with this one, it's just like, you have the titles right there. So you can just grab that book off the shelf and then, and kind of compare and contrast.
Exactly.
Yeah. But which speaking of, let's start reading into this ranking. Honestly, cool. So real quick, before we get started, I'm sure all my viewers know how countdowns work at this point. Thank you all so much once again for clicking on the video. I hope you guys enjoy your stay. Just a reminder, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to hit that big old fat thumbs up at the by the end if you enjoy the video. Hopefully you do. But this list, I'm going to have Jose go first, and we'll alternate back and forth, kind of talk about our choices since you're the guest. I always have my guests go first. But before we really get into this, aside from my first choice at number 10, this was a really tough list to piece together. Like, it's predictable, like, what movies are going to be on the list, but, like, it's where to put them, Like,
I think what ended up becoming for me is that I ended up just saying, this is my personal list. I'm not in a negative way or anything. I'm not here to please anybody. This is just how these films have spoken to me. Yeah. And again, I've seen these films thousands of times. So it's just more of like, if I were to be truly honest with myself, there is no, like, just because this one is at the 10th level doesn't mean I hate it. It just means that it's at 10th for a particular reason, you know what I mean? And we'll go from the list. But I mean, if you want me to begin, I'll begin.
Yeah.
And
here we go.
we'll
Number 10.
Number 10, I have Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
What? Goblet of Fire at 10?
Yeah. Goblet
wow,
of Fire,
starting off hot. Wow, okay. Why number 10?
I love Goblet of Fire, and that's exactly what I just talked to. I love this movie. And kind of what we were talking about before with the sort of the book thing, as in like the book is better and the book is this. My thought in that is always, at the end of the day, the movie has to appeal to somebody, and it's either going to appeal to the book lover or it's either going to appeal to my mom, who is never going to read that book. You know what I mean? It has to commit to something. And in this book, so to me, I never go into it going like, what does the book say? What does the book say? But when I watch Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, I love everything that happens, but I always feel like there is a lot of Hogwarts that we don't get. This is one of the films that, you know, this film takes place in a lot of the Triwizard Tournament, which is totally awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that. I love the dragon and the maze and everything. However, it feels like you lose. The Yule Ball is great, and when, you know, Harry and Cho, you see different like areas of the school that you don't see before, but it's that sort of like magic of Hogwarts, of a lot of the things that are in the book that I'm not necessarily holding the movie to, but it just feels like it's lacking there. So it just kind of feels like it's a very big show movie. It's the dance, it's the grown up, it's the, you know, I remember when the magazine was coming out, it was like Harry and Ron and Hermione are all grown up going to prom, and it was like it's the big flashy movie because we got action and suspense and the big twists and the things. And for me, it's like, I love it. There is nothing that gets me hyped more than that finale between Harry and Voldemort. But I always feel like there is a lot more to that movie that we just did not get.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. By the way, do you remember who directed Goblet of Fire?
That's the point. Nobody ever talks about him. Mike Newell.
Mike Newell. Yep. Yeah. That's the thing. Jose and I always talk about these movies, and he always forgets who directed Goblet of Fire. That's the thing.
That's the point. It's funny because if you look at the production, the whole point was that, and you can kind of see it. Again, I'm not necessarily saying this is why, but like when the franchise was taking off, Alfonso Cuarón was doing number 3, and he was supposed to direct number 4.
Yeah.
But what happened was that the Warner Brothers was like, no, we got to get the next one going. We want to shoot. Well, the problem is that they started principal photography while he was finishing post in Prisoner of Azkaban. So he couldn't do both films. So then they got Mike Newell, who, funny enough, was supposed to be who was originally in line to be the director of Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so then that was like, so then that's where they said, oh, we can pick somebody who we've always had our eye on. But the problem is that Mike Newell, out of the entire Harry Potter saga, will always go down as the, oh yeah, that's right, he directed Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire, yeah. Goblet of Fire is an interesting one. I can talk about it a little more in depth when we get to it on my list because I have it a little bit higher. But I mean, the thing is, you make an excellent point. It doesn't really feel like there's not much of Hogwarts for sure. But I feel like that's a point to be made of like where the Harry Potter franchise was going and the direction it was going too. Like, because the first 3 Harry Potter movies, most of it takes place at Hogwarts, if not all of it. And there's a very welcoming feel to those first 3 movies. Goblet of Fire, I don't really feel like was supposed to be as welcoming, really.
No, and that's fine. And you know, and to that point, exactly. Yeah, no, it's the big one. You're inviting the outside schools in. They're all coming in. We're now exploring how big this world really is. But I would have liked to have seen, well, what does the Durmstrang school go through at Hogwarts? You know what I mean? What does the Ladies of Beauxbaton Academy, what is it like for them to be at Hogwarts? Where are they staying? I know that, you know, some are staying in their ships and things and accommodations, but it's more of like, I wanted exactly what we got in Goblet of Fire, plus more.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I go with it.
That's a really good point. And also, like, you know, getting back to Victor Crumb, who I think was a really interesting character, but he's not, like, you know, portrayed as such in the movie other than as the badass who likes Hermione, you know?
Right.
Honestly, also, this is just kind of a side note, but honestly, this is kind of a flaw I have with the movie. Hogwarts, you know, they announced the Triwizard Tournament, and then Dumbledore introduces each school coming in. The Beauxbatons girls come in, and they have their big old grand entrance,
Yes.
and it's like it's played mostly for comedy, and like
Yeah.
I in no way want to sound sexist at all, but like they come in and they don't pose a threat at all. Like,
Well, and you know what's funny? Well, that's funny. I wouldn't even say it's sexist. I would even think it's like that's actually a good argument because what happens is both in the Durmstrang School and especially in Beauxbaton Academy, they are only played for their superficiality. You know what I mean? It's
yes,
like they come in and it's like, oh look, and then what do they do? The very first shot, and that's kind of what I was saying. It's oh look, they're now looking at butts. So like Ron and Harry are like, oh my god, look at the girls' butts, and that to me is like, that to me is not Harry Potter in a way. That's too modern for me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's in a way it's like it's part of my world, so it's kind of like I don't really like that joke. And then what happens? You don't focus on any of the other girls except for Fleur and her sister.
Yeah,
Fleur and her sister, and then it's like, but even then they're just like, they're whatever. It doesn't matter.
To an extent, you also have Madame Maxime, who has a great relationship with Hagrid in Goblet of Fire. I find it so funny, and like Harry's reactions to it are just priceless.
And that was developed beautifully, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. We got to spend more time with Madame Maxime, and we got to, and it was really sweet when her and Hagrid go to dance. Like those moments, they work. But then everything else is just kind of, you know, Durmstrang is the overseas like brutes, and then Beauxbatons are the beautiful ones from over there, and then you're like, all right, like that's as much as you're gonna get from them. And then even so much so that like at the end, you spend so much little time with Victor Crumb, where at first you're like, oh cool, he's a renowned Quidditch player. Then you're like, oh, he's in the school and he's like a badass. And then at the end, and then he's like really sweet with Hermione, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, he's like, oh, he has a spell on him that's gonna like make him attack Harry or somebody.
Yep, he was under the Imperius curse, I think, around that point during the maze. Yeah,
and to that point, you don't even, if you really think about it, if you were like an outside person watching that film, you'd go, what the hell is happening? You know, like why is he mad? Is he bad now? I mean, I guess I can see the glaze on his eyes, and they never touch on it again. You know, and it's just kind of like it's forgotten about. He almost gets Harry and Cedric, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there we go.
Definitely a detail they glossed over was why Victor Crumb was cursed and why he was suddenly like, you know, like attacking Harry and Cedric. And I think Michael Gambon as Dumbledore addressed it like briefly. He's like, people change in the maze, but he didn't explicitly say that Crumb was under a curse. But
and you know, and then I remember the first time I saw the film, and you know, we'll move on to the next one. But I remember last note is, I remember that when Dumbledore said that, I said, oh, okay, so everybody's gonna change. But then I was like, okay, so you show Fleur, who's like panicky, and then Victor, who's like, okay, he's like a big brute and is, you know, whatever. And then Harry's like hearing voices, but he's still the same. Like you can kind of get it. So then it's more of like, oh, okay, there's an actual mental change that's happening, but you can just overcome it if you focus, you know. And then that's the thing, because then Harry just goes, oh, he's fine, and then Cedric even is like, hey, thanks for helping me, you grab the cup. So
it's crazy to think, by the way, that just a quick side note before I get to my number 10, but it's crazy to think that like a Batman actor was in a Harry Potter movie nowadays. Like, you know, get well soon, Robert Pattinson, by the way. But my number 10, a lot of people might not find this a surprise, but I put Crimes of Grindelwald at number 10. This is the most recent film. A lot of people were really bored by this movie, and I can definitely see those parts like where they would be. It feels... See, here's the thing. I don't hate Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald at all. I actually found a lot to enjoy with it. I'd probably give it like a B, or maybe like as high as a B+, like on my grading system. But there were just a lot of things that really made me like question like the lore of the movies. Like, just again, this is going to be an in-depth podcast, so obviously, spoiler alert, guys, it's revealed that Credence is actually the long-lost brother of Dumbledore. And a lot of people were really confused because, like, what? Dumbledore has only had 3 brothers, and now there's a 4th? Like, I mean, I didn't mind the twist, but it just came, like, really abruptly and just, like, I don't know.
My thing with Crimes of Grindelwald, and we're close as far as, like, in our ranking of it, but I have it a little bit higher. my thing with Crimes of Grindelwald is it is the one movie that I will always say is inside baseball. It is all about you need to know who Dumbledore is, you need to know who these people are, you need to know everything about everything if you're even hoping to grasp this. Perfect example. My girlfriend Kitty has read all the books. I have read all the books and seen all the movies. We've both done that. And we're watching the movie and we're clicking. And then, of course, we still have the same question about Dumbledore at the end. But then we watched it with my sister and my mom. My sister has only seen the films. She was super lost by that movie. And my mom is just an average viewer. And she was like, I have no idea what's happening. I don't understand any of it. And that's the problem with Crimes of Grindelwald. It's a really good film. It's same. I hold it very high on my list. But it's not I will always put that one last when I go to somebody and say, hey, you got to watch a Harry Potter film. Oh, which one should I watch? Watch literally any other one except for that one. Yeah. Because or else you're just not going to get it.
That's a great point.
And that's where it is. And because
and like the
first time I saw it, I was like very. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, first time like I saw Crimes of Grindelwald, there were a lot of people even around me, like they were getting it, but like, there were a lot of people that were just like, I have no idea what's going on. And like a lot of people who are like insiders to Harry Potter, like we've read all the books, like there's gonna be 5 Fantastic Beasts movies. And the feeling I get with Crimes of Grindelwald is it feels very much like a setup movie for those other ones. I'm sure 3, like hopefully 3 and 4 are better, but I do know one thing for sure is that the 5th Crimes of Grindelwald, or Crimes of Grindelwald, here I am. The 5th Fantastic Beasts movie is going to be mainly focusing on the famous 1945 duel of Dumbledore and Grindelwald, where Dumbledore wins the Elder Wand. Like, I know that's where this is going. So, like, this feels very much like a setup movie to me in many ways. It's not to say it's bad, because I really enjoyed a lot of it. I really love the casting of Johnny Depp. It's kind of unpopular among fans, but I think Johnny Depp is not really appreciated enough, really. Like, one of my best...
he's, like, easily one of my favorites in the in that role. Like, he's one of my top favorites. I think he does a phenomenal job.
Oh, absolutely. And the casting of Jude Law as young Dumbledore is just too perfect also. Like, they weren't going to, like, de-age Michael Gambon for the role. Like, it's... But yeah, Jude Law just I wanted more of Jude Law.
It's a film that
like
and then that's the thing. It's like it's the film that you can enjoy because it has a lot of setup, it has a lot of intrigue, it has a lot of unanswered questions from the first movie, and they're still working on it. So it's very like interesting and intriguing because you're trying to figure out the pieces, but then you finish the film honestly going more like, I have more questions than answers, but not in like an Empire Strikes Back kind of way where you're like, oh, well, what does that mean for the future? It's literally more of like, before I can move on to the future, I need to comprehend what the hell I just saw. Like, you know what I mean? What was the big points? What were the themes that we were playing with? And, they really touch on a lot of them. And on my second viewing is when I got a lot more of those like themes of like Grindelwald really has a manipulative sort of like nature to him that is very, very intrusive and in a way, like the maze can change and alter your mind. So then it's like, okay, so when you see Queenie like turn, you're like, whoa, okay, I guess he really has a way, But then again, it's like,
I will also say I respect Crimes of Grindelwald in that regard because I was not expecting the Queenie character to turn evil, like at all.
Right.
Like she was brainwashed, and that's honestly the perfect like mentality because essentially Grindelwald is a cult leader. And, that's, the mentality a lot, he's brainwashing the masses. Like, I don't know, man, but Crimes of Grindelwald is not a bad movie by any stretch. And we'll talk about it a little bit more like on your rankings, I'm sure. But here we go. Moving on. Number 9.
Number 9. Okay. Number 9, I have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
The first one. Okay.
The first one. Yes, because, as we know from this list now, I hold Crimes of Grindelwald slightly higher above Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. But Fantastic Beasts, the first time I saw it, I was like, I'm just loving this because it's Harry Potter world and yay, awesome. And I didn't understand a thing. I didn't get any of the film because, again, it's in that inside baseball thing. It's very like, you have to understand this, and they're introducing a lot of new elements. They're introducing the thing about, that magic that's been, suppressed for so long and then unleashes like a beast. Like, those little moments when you watch it the first time are just kind of like visually stunning. But upon my multiple viewings, I was like, this movie's awesome. I love it.
Really is.
Yeah, I love Fantastic Beasts. So then on my second time, like just watching, one of my favorite shots of the entire film is when, oh my goodness, help me out. Not Johnny Depp, but the person who he is before.
It was Percival, Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Percival, that's right. Percival Graves, right. Percival Graves is Colin Farrell. One of my favorite shots in the entire film is when Percival is walking in New York towards Credence, and Credence is destroying the shop as the giant figure thing, and he's like calling out to him. I don't know, like that to me was such an epic, like, wow, like this is how we're beginning this new, a franchise in a way. And I just really love it. I hold it lower because both of the Fantastic Beasts films I kind of hold lower in my list because they're really good. I just feel that, I just feel that in the grand scope of things, I need to know more about the story before I can sort of start piecing them where I would like to. And also, I've seen the other ones 50,000 times, and I hold such higher, personal connection to that. I really enjoy that. But the music is amazing. The Eddie Redmayne is phenomenal. All of the themes, all of the characters. I love having in New York. Like it's a really, really awesome experience. And for example, like I've seen it when my girlfriend, I'll use her as an example again. The first time she saw it, she was not a fan of it. And then we rewatched it again while getting ready for Crimes of Grindelwald. And even both after that second time, we were like, it needs time to settle. The film has a lot. And that's where Crimes of Grindelwald goes even further. But it just needs time to settle. It needs time to breathe. You need to understand. You need to comprehend what every character's saying, because J.K. in her right with this film is really saying, I know you love Harry Potter, but I'm really trying to give you more for this world.
Yeah, agreed there for sure. It definitely feels like you're trying to throw a lot, or the world was getting thrown like a lot of like inside baseball, pitches, but I mean, I have Fantastic Beasts just a tad bit higher on my list, and I can talk a little bit more detail about it. But definitely, I will say it's definitely perfect casting. I loved Eddie Redmayne as Newt Scamander. The most famous Hufflepuff, not named Cedric Diggory or Lawrence Sweet. There's your shout out, sweetie. But so so Newt Scamander, he's a Hufflepuff. So I also love the casting of Catherine Waterston as Tina. I thought she was absolutely great. And one element that I feel was really underrated about Fantastic Beasts is Dan Fogler as Kowalski, who's a Muggle in New York, basically. As soon as like I saw him like join the adventure with Newt, I was like, oh crap, he's gonna be the annoying character, isn't he? That's just on for the ride. And like, no, he is actually a lot like Hagrid. He is a lot of the emotional punch of Fantastic Beasts, like just the fact that he's like obliviated at the end is just man.
Well, that's funny. It's funny that you say that, because I actually had the exact opposite before watching the film. I actually was like, I am going to love Dan Fogler's character, and I'm really not going to like Catherine Waterston's character. And sure enough, that's kind of the case.
Wow.
I'm not the biggest fan of Catherine Waterston's character. I really appreciate a lot of her moments, but I feel that what she does is that I feel that what the film does is at the very beginning, they give you a character who is very about like rewriting herself, trying to figure out, like she was wrongfully sort of like, demoted because of protecting Credence. But it just kind of becomes a whole thing where like she constantly has to justify herself to somebody.
Right.
Where I was like, I prefer her actions where she was like, no, Newt, I'm taking you in. I'm doing this. Like, I really liked her dominance in that role. But then all of a sudden when she's like, hey, Credence, hey, or Percival. Hey, Percival, I have a guy who is clearly disrupting everything. And Percival just goes, no, don't worry, don't bother me with that nonsense. She just quickly goes, okay, I guess I'm not going to talk to you about it. We'll let the plot build itself, and then I'll bring it up again. Those moments where it's like, but you were so adamant about bringing Newt, and you were so headstrong about your position and your role within the ministry that just because the lead guy says, "Oh, forget about it," she's like, "Okay, I guess I'll forget about it. I'll just wallow in grief because I can't have my job."
Right.
Back. It's kind of like, it's a little contradicting. So just
Little
for me
bit.
personally, I like her more in the second one.
Yeah, that's a great point thinking about it. Yeah, I think she's great in both of them for sure. But yeah, you definitely bring up a good point. There's like definitely some inconsistencies there. I can get into my big problem with Fantastic Beasts once we get into it on my list. But my number 9 is my number 9 might actually shock a lot of viewers. This is where I actually put Sorcerer's Stone, the first one. Number 9. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, this is not to say that Sorcerer's Stone is a bad movie, but this goes for a lot of the people that might have gone to the theater in 2001 without reading the book. Like the book was a huge phenomenon for sure. Lots of people were reading it, but imagine if you're going into Sorcerer's Stone blind. You're not going to have a freaking clue what's going on. This movie feels very much like, like Crimes of Grindelwald. It feels a lot like a setup movie to me because, I mean, it is definitely a big world, but there's a lot of dialogue, which is just like, here's this, Harry. Here's this, Harry. Here are these people, Harry. Here's where you do this. It's just like, it's a lot of like setting up, and I feel like the film is not bad at all. Like, none of these films I think are terrible, but I feel like there was just a lot of explaining going on the rewatch. And I was just like, okay, yeah, I kind of understand at this point. But again, there's so many amazing moments with the Sorcerer's Stone. The climax, especially, I thought was especially fun. Of course, you have the meeting of the 3 leads for the first time on the train. It's just an iconic moment still. But I don't know. To me, it just felt a lot like, it just felt very exposition heavy, and a lot of my viewers know how big I am about like, I like more natural exposition, and it was just throwing tons.
Yeah.
But
I agree. That's, personally, I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
But that's the magic of it. But I think, I think what I will go on is that I think what's very interesting is your point is a point that I've never personally heard about the Sorcerer's Stone. The point that I always tend to hear with Sorcerer's Stone, it's also why a lot of people always have it very low on their list. So it wasn't necessarily surprising, is a lot of people that I have kind of talked to is Harry Potter, Sorcerer's Stone, and Chamber of Secrets, to me, are the most true to the book. So what you run into is more people saying this movie is boring because it's just so like I know what I'm getting into, and now I'm just looking at it visually. And then the other part that I get is people saying, well, I love it. So they hate it because essentially it's just like it's a shot for shot, just like, here we go. Of course, minor alterations here and there. But the two movies just kind of coincide together, and they just feel like the exact same film, almost like a director's cut,
Yeah.
You can pop in the first one and then just pop in second right afterwards.
That's
and
exactly.
And then the other one is people love it.
Yeah,
and then people love it because it's the first ones.
Yeah. Like Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets were both directed by Chris Columbus. I have nothing against Christopher Columbus as a director at all. I think he's absolutely wonderful. But if you put Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets side by side, like if you're looking at them on like 2 different monitors, stylistically, you're pretty much looking at the same exact movie. So that's why I'm kind of glad that they brought in Alfonso Cuarón when they did. Like, it's I don't know. Sorcerer's Stone is definitely interesting, but like I said, I don't think it's a terrible movie at all. I have a lot of really fun memories with Sorcerer's Stone, as like, I watched it a lot in my childhood. Like the Sorting Hat scene was one that I watched tons for some reason. I don't know why just the Sorting Hat scene. I just liked hearing him say Gryffindor or something like that. I love the Mountain Troll scene. The Mountain Troll scene is so much fun. Like, I don't know. To me, it just felt like setting up this. I felt like it just was focusing more on like the exposition on a rewatch, But
yeah, I get it. I'll talk. I think I'll talk a little bit of some other points when we get to where I have it on the list. But interesting point on it.
Yeah, absolutely, man, for sure. Hey, that's the magic of these, these rankings. These things will be at way different spots on our lists for sure. And by the way, also just
big time.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move on to number 8.
Okay, my number 8, I have Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald.
There it is. There it
Yeah,
is.
so
All
there it
right.
is. So I hold it just right above the first one because, and then talking again on a lot of the points is, I find that Crimes of Grindelwald is a very, very awesome big world picture, like get ready, here we go. So then as I have a problem with it, I can also appreciate the fact that like it, in a very almost selfish kind of way, it's like, oh cool, well this is the movie for like the really hardcore sweaty nerds of Harry Potter that are
Yep.
like, I want to know how that battle happened. I want to know where Grindelwald. I want to know what happens with Dumbledore. I want to know how all the pieces fit in together. I want to know how Newt essentially ties it all up. I want to see, you know, I really, one thing that I really love in the first one is that I really, when I thought about the Fantastic Beasts thing, I was like, I don't want to watch a movie of a guy just collecting creatures. Right?
Yeah.
But then that's the magic of Eddie Redmayne, is that he's so lovable and so charming about it.
Oh, yeah.
In the second one, when it developed, in the second one, I was like, oh, I want more. I want more creatures. I want to see what else you can do. And then that kind of like in that market where they have that lion-like thing that Newt gets with sort of like ball. Like that scene alone is like, wow, how awesome. And it just develops, and I like seeing where Credence is going to go. And then Nagini, which I felt was big
Nagini.
setup. Nagini to me was like, okay, cool, but also what? Like, you know, it's kind of like that.
It doesn't
to me,
make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It
like,
was just more of added point to be like, hey, you remember who Nagini is? Okay, cool. We'll talk about her later. We're only going to show her shift once. We'll tell you that she has a blood curse, so she's doomed for this thing. But it's like, okay, but like, as much as I don't like how much you gave me of her, I am still very intrigued as to how does she end up next to Voldemort, and then will we get Tom Riddle as the story continues, or, you know, a lineage of sorts. Like that to me is like, oh, I can't wait to see how that connects.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure Tom Riddle graduates from Hogwarts in the mid-40s in that universe. So that would be roughly around the time of the duel in the 5th movie. So maybe I mean, I think it's doubtful that Tom Riddle appears in the Fantastic Beasts movies, but like, it's possible, very, very slim possibility he appears in the 5th one for like a couple minutes. But like, that's actually a brilliant segue into why I put my number 8 where it is. It's the first Fantastic Beasts movie is where I have number 8. So
nice. There
like,
you go. So
so Crimes of Grindelwald definitely does have a lot of those callbacks. Like, you have Nagini, as you mentioned. You have Professor McGonagall appearing in Crimes of Grindelwald somehow.
Yeah.
And you have Dumbledore as the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, very charismatic. He's having students do the ridiculous curse, which I think is an awesome callback. But the reason why Fantastic Beasts, the first one, I kind of hold in higher regard is because in that stage of cinema, we were getting a lot of spin-off movies. We were getting Jurassic World. We were getting the female Ghostbusters. We were getting, God, I don't even know, like Alien.
It was the year. It was the year of the, you're right. It was Alien.
Alien Covenant.
Whatever. Yes.
Alien Covenant. Yeah, I don't even mind that film personally, but like, we were getting a whole bunch of spin-offs, and I feel like a lot of them were relying on the nostalgia of the originals. Mm-hmm. And on a rewatch, I never really got that from the first Fantastic Beasts movie. Like, I liked that the Harry Potter universe was willing to explore other avenues in other parts of the world. And that's one of my biggest praises I can give these Fantastic Beasts movies is that they're willing to explore, I don't know, New York City. They're willing to explore Paris. I hear they're planning on going down to Brazil for the third one. So, you know, which I think is going to look really, really awesome. And you're going to get a lot of really neat creatures in Fantastic Beasts 3. And the design of the creatures is also phenomenal. So cool. I wish all those things were real. But, like, I just feel like the first movie, like, of the Fantastic Beasts is just, I feel like the story is a little bit more coherent.
True. I can agree with that.
Like,
definitely.
Yeah, that's not to say I didn't understand Crimes of Grindelwald. Of course not. But, like, I don't know. It's just like, it felt like more of a more well-structured 3-act movie. And like Fantastic Beasts Crimes of Grindelwald was throwing so much more at us in terms of like Easter eggs and like, you know, here's Dumbledore and then you have Grindelwald forming a death cult. Like, there was a lot more going on in Crimes of Grindelwald. Fantastic Beasts is simpler.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I mean, my one big issue with the Fantastic Beasts movie that kind of ties into the Crimes of Grindelwald is pretty much the climax of the first Fantastic Beasts movie. You have Credence in the train station, and Credence is freaking blown up. Like, he should
Yes.
be freaking dead. And, like, he
Yeah.
appears in the second movie just fine. And I'm like, what? Weren't you just killed? Like,
and that's the thing. That's always why I prefer Crimes of Grindelwald literally by just one number. But definitely agree. They do. I don't like using the word retcon, but they very are like, oh no, we can do more with Credence. Oh no, we can do more with
Tina?
Dan Fogler, Tina.
Oh,
like we can
Tina,
do
yeah.
so much more with everybody, and it feels kind of like you guys, a team of Aurors, just blew up Credence.
Yeah, like,
and then you can kind of see, okay, fine, sure, you hinted at like the black little, there's like a little black mist that goes away in the distance, but then even that, it's like,
yeah.
to the question of even Goblet of Fire, it's, but you never told me how the hell he came back. Like, how if he doesn't know his own power and can't control it, you're supposed to expect me to believe that in a world of fantasy, that from this cloud he finds way to reform his self and has now a control. Yeah, definitely. And you know, to your point also about the first Fantastic Beasts, yeah, it's very simple in the way of like, it's Newt. He has to go find Beast. He just so happens to get entangled with the situation, and it develops into a bigger plot. Whereas in Crimes of Grindelwald is like, oh no, the world is falling apart. Credence is back. Dumbledore, Hogwarts, and there's creatures. Don't worry about it. It'll all make sense as we go along.
Yeah. I feel like it'll all make sense, like, once we have the full picture of 5 movies. Like, once we have the duel with Dumbledore and Grindelwald, I feel like it's going to make a lot more sense. But I don't know. I mean, I swear, though, Jose, if they reveal that freaking Credence has Horcruxes around, I'm going to be really upset. But, like, and that's why he came back.
I mean,
but
there's a lot that we can go into, but it definitely leaves it as to, like, I really hope they stick that landing. I really hope they do. Don't get me wrong. As a fanboy, I'm going to love it regardless, and I'll have my own personal taste and likes and wants.
Of course.
But I really want that to, like, if you're really doing this and you're introducing this completely different brother, tell me that story. I'm in. Let's go.
Yep, absolutely, man. But but Fantastic Beasts are both of them are pretty low on our list, I'm just noticing. So that leaves pretty much the main franchise movies left. Pretty much the rest of the way. Here we go. Number 7.
Number 7, Chamber of Secrets.
Okay, all right. Chamber of Secrets.
And again, to so similar points, Chamber of Secrets to me, it's I love it because if I'm watching all of the films, I'm like, cool, I gotta put in there. It's number 2, but it's just I love the Basilisk. One thing that I will say, and I'll touch on later with Sorcerer's Stone, one thing that I always loved about Chris Columbus that he did so well is that he and the design team built Hogwarts. The Chamber of Secrets is a tangible room. There is an actual Salazar Slytherin massive water fountain. You know, even when Harry's fighting the basilisk is a puppet basilisk. You know, like little things like that is always like, you know, my personal heart has always been in that. Like, I don't have a problem with CG, but when I can see a place like Hogwarts and a basilisk and a diary and things like that sort of be there in person, it really pulls me in. However, Chamber of Secrets, to kind of, you know, some of the pros for that, some of the cons are just, it feels like I'm just watching Sorcerer's Stone because it just feels like the same movie. The cinematography doesn't change. Everything's the exact same. It just, again, it's fine, but it just feels like, because Chris Columbus did that, okay, there it is. But then my thing is, and you know, you kind of touched on it, what if they didn't bring Alfonso Cuarón back? Or what if they didn't bring Alfonso Cuarón and they kept with Chris Columbus? When we have all 8 films look the exact same, that's kind of monotonous and boring.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't imagine. Like, I couldn't imagine, man.
Imagine freaking Goblet of Fire with Chris Columbus. Like, not knocking on the director, but
no.
Yeah, he has a very specific touch. And Chamber of Secrets, if it's on TV, I will sit and I will quote the entire film. but it will never be that movie that I'm like, we gotta pop in Chamber of Secrets right now. I just never, it never hits me in that way.
Yeah. I actually, personally, I have Chamber of Secrets a little bit higher on my list, but I mean, you make a lot of really great points. And like similar, like Chris Columbus, again, not knocking on the director, but like the first two Harry Potter films, and better yet, the first two Home Alone films also, if you put them right next to each other, they're very interchangeable. Like Home Alone 2 feels exactly like the same first Home Alone movie, just in a different location, you know? And like, I feel like Chamber of Secrets, like, the reason why I have it higher is because similar to Crimes of Grindelwald, what you talked about with the first Fantastic Beasts movie, like Chamber of Secrets has the benefit of not having to set up this entire world. You know, it can build on that a little bit, you know, like, and it really, like, it feels like a really captivating mystery movie to me, honestly. Like, they formulate a really, really fantastic story, and it feels completely different from all the other Harry Potter films. Like, it feels more of like a whodunit in a lot of ways, you know, and I love whodunits.
On that end, that's really neat. Like, you know, like giving a younger audience, you know, everybody watches these films, but like giving a younger audience like a mystery film that takes place in the past and also in the present, you know, and it's tying the knots together and things like that. It's like, it's incredibly complex and really, really intriguing. Jeannie is pouring bits of her soul to give the Horcrux a chance to come back. Like, oh, that's it's awesome. And then the Basilisk, like, you know, Moaning Myrtle, like creature. She saw the eye, and that's what she's cursed. So it's kind of cool because it's what Chamber of Secrets does very well is that it gives you things about the castle and the world that you're like, oh no, these things have been at play for centuries, and it's like, oh, how cool, how exciting. You know, the diary has just always been there, and the Basilisk is still roaming the halls of Hogwarts. It's like, whoa, what the heck? You know, like that to me. I will say my favorite in Chamber of Secrets is always when they open the bathroom in the Slytherin bathroom, the one that they can't go into.
Oh, yeah.
Once they open that, when they open the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets from there, that's like my all-time favorite. I love it. I love when Gilderoy gets in there and he starts messing everything up, and
that climax is just so unbelievable in the chamber. And like Kenneth Branagh also, like, modern day Sir Laurence Olivier, fantastic casting as Gilderoy Lockhart. I think he's a really underrated casting in the entire franchise. Like, I don't think enough people talk about him, but I can talk a little bit more about Chamber of Secrets and why I love it so much personally, like, once we get a little bit lower. But my number 7, oh man, you're gonna be so mad at me. This is where I put Half-Blood Prince. Half-Blood Prince. Yep.
Okay.
Half-Blood Prince is number 7. So
I can. I got a little bit higher.
The thing I really, really appreciate about the Half-Blood Prince is that it feels like a Harry Potter movie that's more so made for adults. You know, like, it's a very character-driven film, and I really respect that.
So good.
It's so great, and like the comedy in Half-Blood Prince, it's a really funny movie. Like, Harry, like, drinking the liquid luck, it just makes me bust up every time. And they go to a freaking, like, funeral for Aragog, who was ironically enough introduced in Chamber of Secrets, and you think it's a scene that's going to be played for, like, you know, for like tears because of Aragog, but like, no, it's played for laughs because Daniel Radcliffe's on liquid luck there, and he's talking about the pincers, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, but like, this is really funny, you know.
But even then, it kind of hits at the end. Even then, when, like, as the camera's panning out, you kind of like see it, like the sun is setting and Hagrid is there with Slughorn, and you're kind of like, oh, that is kind of sad. It was very funny. To me, I wouldn't say it's tears, but I would say it's kind of like heartwarming. Like, I got a lot of laughs out of this, but then it's like, oh, how sad. I kind of feel for Hagrid in that moment. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
I feel like Jim Broadbent's favorite filler phrase in Half-Blood Prince was Merlin's beard.
Oh, so good.
I feel so like
good. I love everything.
If you guys want a drinking game for Half-Blood Prince, drink every time Slughorn says Merlin's beard. You'll be dead by the end of the movie. But in any regard, Half-Blood Prince is definitely very good. It builds, like, the reason why it's so low on my list is because I remember when I was in middle school is when it came out, and that was the only Harry Potter movie that I went to go see the midnight premiere for back when movie theaters were doing the midnight premieres. And I remember coming out of the movie theater. I remember coming out of the movie theater kind of underwhelmed for some reason. I don't know what it
Wow.
was.
Interesting.
Like it was like I feel like because I was somebody that was expecting more of like the action and everything, you know, because like I had watched The Goblet of
Mhm.
Fire and Order of the Phoenix even has a lot of really neat action elements in it, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It just seems like compared to everything else, aside from Dumbledore's death, it appears pretty uneventful. You know, it's like one more full
Mm.
year at Hogwarts, which I enjoy, and you see Harry and Ginny get together finally, but it's like I don't know. I mean, you got Ron on the Quidditch team, you got Slughorn coming in and having his little slug club. I don't know. And like they go into the cave also, which God, how did they get there? I know that we were introduced to apparating, but like I know it was a lot more complicated in the book. And I feel like that's another thing. I feel like the movie left out a lot from the Half-Blood Prince novel that
Yeah.
just would have like made things in the movie make a lot more sense, you know?
I will say to your point, I'll talk more about my love for my adoration for Half Blood Prince later on. But I will say this, and I always, always, always say this to anybody that I talk to. Half Blood Prince, at the end of the movie, you walk out going, so, okay, he's the Half Blood Prince. What does that mean? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't hold the punch because, yeah, Harry uses the spell against Draco and all that stuff. But in the book, and again, we're not comparing because I'm not that person.
Right.
But I feel like by the end of the book, you kind of get a more sense of like that reveal that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince is kind of like oh, it makes sense. The one person that Harry would be admiring and sort of like following the footsteps happens to be this person. But in the movie, it just so happens that like I'm not also the biggest fan of that sequence of shots because it's like he kills them and Harry's running and Bellatrix is destroying the castle, which I love those shots, but I don't like how then Harry uses the spell Sanctum Sempra and then Snape blocks it and then he just turns around and says, "Oh, you think you're gonna use these spells against me?" And then he says, "I am the Half-Blood Prince," and then Harry's like basically like, "Whoa, what the hell?" And then Snape is like, "Okay, deuces, bye," and then just leaves. And then, again, it's like there's no weight to it because at the end of the day, we as an audience while we're watching the movie, we know that Harry hates Snape. So in that moment, even if him revealing that, it kind of gives me more of a feeling of, okay, cool, well, thanks for the mystery solved, but like there's no other weight to it because Harry is like unaffected by it. Harry's like, I hate you regardless, even if you were the Half-Blood Prince or not, I still hate you.
And honestly, though, yeah, that's a really great point. I honestly feel like Chamber of Secrets created a more like captivating mystery than Half-Blood Prince did, mostly because like we're still like kind of grieving the death of Dumbledore, which I think was handled beautifully in the movie, by the way. Like it's oh man, it was so sad, but like yeah, exactly to your point. Snape reveals that he's the Half-Blood Prince, and honestly, like I don't know who else would be the Half-Blood Prince because, like, Harry grabs the book in the potions class, and the book says it's the property of the Half-Blood Prince. Snape was the potions master forever, so it makes sense that he would be the Half-Blood Prince, Like, piecing that together, I think, was definitely, like... And also, I completely forgot to mention, Draco Malfoy becomes a Death Eater in this one. Like, that's pretty eventful, I would say. Like, the iconic I was chosen, and revealing the Dark Mark. And I was, like, growing up, like, hating Draco and, like, hoping that he wouldn't turn to the dark side and seeing that freaking, like, seeing the freaking tattoo on his forearm. I was like...
Dark Mark.
The Dark Mark, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's like the tattoo, like, rather. They're insignia. Like, but I saw that and I remember my heart just sinking. I was like, oh no, Draco's a Death Eater. Like, but
it I'll kind of talk about it too, but like it hurts when he says it. He like looks at Dumbledore in this fantastic way where he threatens Dumbledore and then he wants to trust in Dumbledore so he doesn't commit the act he's about to do, or he never does. But when he says I was chosen, it's almost like he didn't even want it. You know what I mean? Like it just so happened that he's a Malfoy of this lineage of Death Eaters and sort of quote unquote evil people that like it always breaks my heart. I love that scene when he's like, I can't, I have to do this. I was chosen. and he's just looking at Dumbledore, and oh, dude, we'll talk about it when it gets to mine.
Totally, yeah, but
so powerful.
Totally. One more thing I will say, just adding on to that, I thought Tom Felton was just magnificent in that moment, and he's magnificent regardless. But like in that moment specifically, I was like, damn, this guy's a freaking awesome actor, you know, like because he like you feel that struggle for him, you know, he doesn't want to do it, but like you feel like he's almost like not this is kind of a weird comparison. It's almost like Anton in No Country for Old Men. It's like he doesn't really want to do it, but like he has to, you know? Like
it's the way that I always put it is that this is his movie. This is Tom Felton's movie.
Yeah.
It's the one where he gets all of the acting out of the way. He gets the villain, he gets the torment, he gets the added pressure of his family lineage. It is just, this movie to me, he always shines in this film, and it is always my favorite performance of his.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I agree for sure. Tom Felton was great, but in any regard, I'm curious to find out where this movie falls on your list, but let's keep going. Number 6.
I don't know where I was. There we go. Okay, ready. Okay, here we go. Number 6, Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Deathly Hallows Part 1. Okay. Yeah. All right. Why at this
Part
point?
1. Yes. So at this point, the thing with these movies is that, and it was kind of hard with the film. It's Deathly Hallows Part 1, and I will go down in history as always saying this. Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2 are the types of movies where I can never just sit and watch the first one. I immediately, the minute I finish the first one, I have to pop in the second.
Yeah.
I can't because, and that's why it's in the middle of my list, because it is a build-up movie. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that's why it's lower on my list, because it's big and it has a grand scale, but it feels like it leaves you halfway. And that's the point of it. That's the point of being a Part 1. But it's because I'm always like, oh man, I love what you're doing, and I'm loving the buildup, and I'm anticipating. I've been waiting years for this moment, and then Dobby dies, and then it just, sort of like all of the elements kind of coming together. Harry's trying to cope with Dumbledore being gone, and him having feelings for Ginny. Like, it's when all of the emotions come to play, and that's where I love it, but then it kind of leaves you. So for the sake of this list, I basically have to put it at lower, because it's like very, very energizing and exciting, but for a moment, because you need the second part to get the big punch that makes the Deathly Hallows the sort of the climactic ending that they are.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you. And you know what? This might be a rarity on this podcast. And real quick, before I get into that, I apologize to any of the viewers that might be experiencing some unstable like connection between us two. It's probably the crappy Sunday night internet over here, but it's all good. They're just going to have to deal. It's all good. But in any case, it's a rarity. My number 6 is also Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, so this built a lot on Half-Blood Prince. It was pretty much Half-Blood Prince with all the action that I was looking for. You know, I really enjoyed watching this in the theater. The chilling opening scene at the dinner table with Voldemort and all the Death Eaters surrounding him, and he requests Lucius's wand, you know, to go and kill Harry. You know, it's like, and that big old chase scene with all the decoy Harrys, like, is just so much fun. It's so cool. And just the way each scene builds on top of the other, like they're hunting Horcruxes for the most of it.
It's also very like, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted your point.
Oh, it's all good. I was just gonna say, like, you know, Ron and Harry's like argument that they have in the tent, Harry and Hermione dancing together, which apparently wasn't in the book. It's a amazing addition, I think. Godric's Hollow was heartbreaking. Like,
heartbreaking. Yeah.
I mean,
that's kind of where I am with it. It's the Deathly Hallows Part 1 gives you what you're not going to get in the second one. And the second one, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of heartfelt moments and a lot of moments that make you go like, oh, sweet, awesome, great. But the first movie, what it does is that it lets you breathe. And it's sort of like taking a big breath out, and Harry, and that's why I love it too, because well, I'll get into that point in a second, but it's, you breathe. You watch Harry and Hermione dancing, the fight between two friends, love, the Horcrux chase, what it's doing to their emotional and physical state, like to sacrifice the opening, them in London, Hermione erasing her parents' memories, like so many elements that
Yeah.
then when the second movie comes, it's when you take a deep breath back in because it's like, okay, here we go. And the best way that I always compare the two films is actually by the posters. The Deathly
Mm.
Hollows Part 1 poster, it's them running in the woods. And that's essentially the movie. The movie's a big chase film. It's just
Yeah.
them constantly running from people. But then in the second poster for Deathly Hallows Part 2, it's the three main characters looking head on, bloodied and beaten up with the castle burning in the background. And that's kind of where it is. It's like the first movie, it's essentially almost a chase, running, always never staying put, always trying to get to the end. And then the final poster is, nope, this is the finale, this is where we make our stand. And that's, I've always loved the contrast between those two.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. That's a really great point. The Deathly Hallows Part 2 poster that I was thinking of was with Harry and Voldemort like in a stare down. I think that was the banner on my local movie theater. I think that was the banner they had up for it.
Yeah, with the Elder One in the middle. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but I never really thought about it that way. And like on the rewatch, yeah, that's what a lot of this movie felt like, a big chase movie, almost like a thriller, and like the same vein as like The Fugitive almost. It's kind of a weird like comparison, but like
Yeah.
it felt like, again, it feels very different from like all the other movies that came before it. It feels like a really contained thriller with these three characters,
Yeah.
and like there's a lot of really satisfying moments, but the reason why it's at this point on my list at number 6 is because Part 1 in the title. So I know there's going to be a cliffhanger. I'm sitting there watching the movie, and like, I remember like very vividly when I went and saw this movie in the theater, it was so packed that the only seats left for us to go into were literally like on the edge in the aisle in the very front row. So we were pretty much sitting like at the corner of this big screen, and we're just kind of looking at it like sideways. And I'm like, I don't care. This is Harry Potter. I'm here,
Yeah. You got to do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then Voldemort freaking puts his wand up in the air, and I'm just like, oh yeah.
And that's
I've got to wait.
Yeah. But even then, that ending was like kind of where it's like you're running, and even again Voldemort too. Voldemort's constantly trying to find like how do I get to Harry? How do I get to Harry? How do I get to Harry? And then all of a sudden, when it's like it all comes back to Hogwarts, where it's like, wow, like also I'm a big fan of that shot too, because David Yates does this like pulsing thing where the camera goes black and then back to image, back and black to image. The grave, it cracks. You see Voldemort, you see Dumbledore, and then you see the camera pan down to the Elder One, and it's like, it's so awesome. And again, the cool thing about that ending is that if you don't read the books, you're like, oh, that's it, game over. Like, he has the most powerful wand. But then when you find out that it's like, well, he's not necessarily attuned to it, then it's like, oh crap, like, damn, So I mean, watching the movie, well, for me, I watched the movies before I read the books, but I knew about the Elder Wand because I just spent all of my time not doing anything but reading Harry Potter stuff. Wow. But it's like in that moment, it's so like, what a way to end it. Like, he is right on the grounds of Hogwarts, like the one thing that Dumbledore never wanted, and now he is physically touching his body to desecrate and take this thing, and it's so cool.
It really is. It really is, man. It's a great way to end it, and like, it's a way for us to get excited about like Part 2 after freaking Dobby dies. Like,
oh god,
like that was one moment in my like marathon of rewatching that almost made me tear up. There was one other moment that had me like full on sobbing, which I'll get to, but like, man, that was, oh yeah, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1, man. It's a good one. Can't watch it without Part 2, honestly, but
yeah,
when we were watching it in the theaters, we have to wait, it's just like, oh, like I kind of know what happens because I read the book, but like, oh, I want to see it. But
yeah, it's something else.
They made it work, man.
With my, well, I guess if we're honestly talking about it, I'll just reveal it. My next one on the list is Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Really? Number 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 5. It's right in there. Because again, they coincide. They're the same movie. Deathly Hallows, to me, you break it down in numbers, but it is just one big 4-hour movie. And that's just
Yeah.
always how I'll see that movie. Yeah, it's, it's everything because it begins slow and then it ends, and again, it's the most epic way. The conversation that Harry has with Dumbledore, him figuring out about the Elder Wand, them trying to discuss it, his wand breaks, the breaking into Gringotts. Like, there's so many things that happen that it's like, wow, like the everything is at play. Everything that the world has been building up to is at play, and we're showing you the effects that it has had on our characters and how they're ready to face it on, and then them rallying up everybody. And one thing that I will always kind of not necessarily agree with much is having Rutherford, so Dumbledore's brother,
Oh, yeah.
where it's again, it's if you don't read it, you're kind of like, okay, whatever, awesome, like great, and there's Dumbledore's sister, great. There's really no big like impact to it. And again, not to sort of compare it, but in the books, during the Weasley wedding with Flair, I always forget the brother.
Bill.
Bill. So with Bill and Fleur and their wedding, there's a big emphasis on people telling Harry, "Hey, Dumbledore was like not the best person. He did some stuff," and then Harry has to find out all this information about his brother and his sister and Grindelwald and the Elder Wand and so on. That then when he sees Rutherford at the end, you're like, oh wow, like he's still there and he lives outside and there's the portrait. Like it hits harder. So
yeah.
in the movie, it was just kind of like a moment of, okay, cool. I guess we'll get that explained later. I guess whatever the situation may be. But then when he gathers the troops and Neville comes into his own, and like everything about it, the sword comes back. They go back to the chamber, and it's like it's almost like a last goodbye. We're gonna visit all the hits. We're gonna go back to all the places that we love.
Yeah.
And it packs that emotional punch, but it's just so epic. And I will go down in history saying the way that the end of Half-Blood or Deathly Hallows Part 2 is handled in the movie, to me, far superior exceeds the way that it happened in the book. Because in the book, it felt very like, okay, cool, they fought and all this stuff, and then he disarms him, and the wand comes up, and Harry catches it, and boom, Voldemort's dead. Again, I'm, sort of leaving out a lot of it, but it just feels very kind of like, it's a battle, and there it is. In the movie, it felt like these multiple layers, and again, it's the point of the film, it's the climactic ending.
Mm-hmm.
But it's these layers of Voldemort has the upper hand, Harry has the upper hand, no, they don't, they go, and then that final one where they just, the imagery alone of like they might be the same person if Harry doesn't play his cards right, and when they fall down and the image shifts and it shows the two of them joined and then separated apart, and then they land on the courtyard of the castle, and it's just so epic. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, like when I think about Harry Potter, I always think about that moment, because I think about Voldemort just on his knees crawling to get the Elder Wand. And in that slow moment when he casts Expelliarmus and Avada Kedavra, it's like this, like when the movie goes back to normal speed, it's like, as an audience member, you're like, this is it. Like, this is the moment. And when it happens, it's just like, wow, how epic and how stunning, and visuals and all of it. I love it. But I have it lower because I hold other movies higher to it, because this movie doesn't function without the other films.
Right. Yeah. That's fair enough. Yeah. I definitely have it higher on my list for sure. And I'm sure I'll go into more detail about it when we get to it. But like, yeah, I agree with everything you just said, man. Like that imagery of Voldemort crawling to the Elder Wand, it just really goes to show you how like desperate he was in that moment. It's just a really like, I love that arc. Like, I love Voldemort as a villain for sure. Ralph Fiennes, I think, played it masterfully. Like he was he was so like menacing and so cocky also at the same time, because like, like he knows he can pretty much never die unless they find out his secret about the Horcrux. And then when they do, it's like, once they finally get all of them, he's like, oh, time's running out. I'm desperate, and like that imagery is just so. That final battle is just amazing, and I'm sure I'll talk more about it when I get to it on my list. But my number five is actually where I put Chamber of Secrets.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. So this is, like I said earlier, this is really captivating mystery, almost like a whodunit that Chris Columbus put together in the Harry Potter universe. And like it benefits, I feel like, more than Sorcerer's Stone without it really being a setup movie because it doesn't really have to set a whole bunch of else up. We do learn some new things in Chamber of Secrets for sure, but like it doesn't have the benefit of not well, it has the benefit of not having to set up this world, you know. It has the benefit of building onto it, you know. And I have a lot more nostalgic memories with Chamber of Secrets than I do Sorcerer's Stone personally. This was like I had both movies on DVD. I didn't get to see them in theaters, sadly, but I remember Chamber of Secrets. That DVD was always on, like all the time. I just love that thing so much. It was always on repeat. I would go to sleep with Chamber of Secrets on, like, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, it was always on my TV. But like, like I remember specifically, I would have the Cornish Pixies scene playing a lot on loop. That was a really fun scene, a really fun lesson, and like just the way, like, it's a really well written and crafted script. I think just the way it like puts all the pieces of the puzzle into place. Like, you find out who the heir of Slytherin is during the climax. You find out that Gilderoy Lockhart is, in fact, a fraud who's been taking people's memories. And it's like, it all makes sense. It all adds up, you know? And, like, even at the end with Dobby, it's like, oh, Dobby was the servant of the Malfoys. And it's like, man, you know, but the thing that really gets me, my friend, is actually the ending. In the Great Hall, the reunion between the three friends is definitely very emotional. And you remember that moment I was talking about where a moment got me more than Dobby's death in terms of sobbing? That was Hagrid's entrance. Hagrid? Yep. Oof. Yeah, so every single time I watch Chamber of Secrets, without fail, Hagrid comes in after being released from Azkaban, after being framed for being the heir of Slytherin and opening the chamber. It's like, he comes back and it's just like, Hagrid never did anything wrong. Like, you know, you did all this shit to Hagrid, and he comes back home, and like Harry says, "There's no Hogwarts without you, Hagrid," and they hug. I just lost it on rewatch. And you know, adding in John Williams' brilliant score also is just like, oh man, every time that happens,
it's a very beautiful ending, and I think to praise on Chamber of Secrets, that talking about what you're saying with the writing, what really works is the fact that, like, in the first movie, Hagrid helps Harry and Hermione helps Harry. You know, like, all of the pieces are always here to help everybody. But when you start taking those away, like, well, what are you going to do, Harry, if Hagrid's away? And, oh, my God, look, Hermione. I just bought my headphones. Hermione, what are you going to do? She's petrified. Like, it's really cool to see the characters kind of, like, struggle, you know? And that's the part where it's like, I really always like that part of these. Harry is always gonna go forth, and you know, Ron is he's a Gryffindor in his own way, but like, what are you gonna do? You don't have the smarts, you don't have the adult figure who you can kind of look to. What are you gonna do, you know? And sure enough, they go to Gilderoy because they're like, I need an adult figure, and it's like, sure enough, he actually is the worst one. But I always appreciated that, and I always that the ending with Hagrid, very, very nice.
Oh man, it gets me every time. But like, on the other side of the spectrum, Chamber of Secrets is also a really underrated feature that I think is like, it's a pretty funny movie actually. There's a lot of really funny like little things with Ron in this movie, especially with his wand. It breaks pretty much on instant once they arrive at Hogwarts in the car because they miss the train because freaking Dobby, little snot-nosed little oh man, Dobby got so much better, but like, but yeah, so like Ron, like, he breaks his wand, and like his gimmick is like his spells always backfire on him, you know, like it's like he tells Malfoy to eat slugs, and the spell rebounds on him, and he starts throwing up slugs himself. And Rupert Grint is so funny as Ron. He sells it so well. Like, his face turns purple in Hagrid's hut when he's puking up slugs. I'm like, man, he is really not in a good way right now.
It's he does a lot. He shines more. He definitely establishes himself definitely more as the comedic relief. But then even that, it's like, that's the heart part, the nice part about it, that it's like you didn't lose that. The character didn't go from like, Ron the hero to the buffoon. It's like, no, he is a hero and a buffoon and very scared of a lot of things all at once, and that's the charm of his character. And it
Yeah.
works so well because of that. Yeah. So then even by the end when he goes to cast it in the chamber, then Harry's like, can we not?
Yeah, and once they that's a great point. Again, piecing the puzzle together. Like once they finally do get down to the chamber and Lockhart grabs Ron's wand and he's preparing to obliviate the boys, like he's using Ron's wand, so it backfires on him. Like
Yeah.
the movie does not cheat at all, which is something I
Yeah.
really appreciate. It's Chamber of Secrets is always nostalgic for me. It's in my top 5 for sure for that reason. But I mean.
Okay.
Yeah,
that works.
Totally, yeah. But man, we're getting down to it already, man. This has been a great time already. If you guys are enjoying it so far, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't yet. But number 4.
Number 4, Half-Blood Prince.
There it is.
Half-Blood
Prince. Yep.
Zach, when I tell you I love a Harry Potter film, and this is number 4, so you can already tell what my feelings are for my top 3.
Oh, of course.
Half-Blood Prince, it is an absolutely stunning film. The cinematography alone in that movie is like, I mean, I will get into it with another film that I have on my list, but it is gorgeous. That's just one of the points of that movie. It is visually stunning. The yellow tones throughout the entire film, the dark blues and grays when they go to the cave. Like, David Yates is playing with the cinematography in this to convey so much. Yes. Felix Felicis and the potions class. Like, for the first time, potions doesn't really seem as gross and vile. It seems very kind of like it's just a mundane room where you can happen to create really colorful and things. But Snape was just always Snape was always the one. But
yeah, and no offense, but like Slughorn seems like the more mundane teacher of the bunch. So like, you come in and like, I think somebody like even has a line where like, so how was the slug party? And it's like pretty boring actually. And I'm like, man, that's mean. Like Slughorn's so nice. Like,
but what I also love about that film is that when Harry starts wanting to get the info from Slughorn and you get the double memory of this is the tampered memory, and then this is the actual memory. Like, it's so awesome to see that part of magic. And then when Dumbledore introduces the pensieve again, but it's like, hey, but I've collected these amounts of memories over the years, and he's like, this is my favorite memory. And it's just, again, that film is answering questions but leaving others open. And again, it's just visually, I am always attracted to that film. Half-Blood Prince is like, boom, it's a movie.
Yeah.
And then the colors all go back to almost like to me, it's like the film is always like this, like, Harry's in a different state of mind in this film. And then all of a sudden, when Dumbledore dies, the film goes back to its normal colors. Like, the cinematography almost like goes back to normal. And you see Snape and the fire and Hagrid's hut, and it's just kind of like, man, like it felt like I was on Felix Felicis the entire time. And then the film sort of reminds me again of like, but it always ends. Like, those feelings, those good moments or whatever they might be, they end. And then again, Tom Felton to me steals this movie. He is my favorite character in this film. And then Michael Gambon is just the best. I love everything. I love the cave scene and the score. It's just so like, it's powerful. It's powerful stuff. That it really is. In the cave when he's like talking to himself and murdering and asks Harry to kill him. It's like, it's just powerful. It's just powerful stuff. And that's when I was watching that, I was like, damn, like these movies are really getting to me. Like they're really telling me that like what I thought the bigger threat was, I know it was going to be big, but it's like, it's affecting everybody. And I still haven't even seen Voldemort. Like, Voldemort's not even in the film.
Voldemort's not in the film. It's so insane to me. Like, I didn't even remember. Like, on the rewatch, I was looking for him, and I was like, Ralph Fiennes does not appear in one frame in Half-Blood Prince. And I'm like,
not one.
It's still a really captivating film without him. Like, you have a lot of really fun moments, like, with the Felix Felicis. And I definitely agree with you. And I never even really thought about that. The cinematography, I love how David Yates, like, directs these movies. Like, they are just so... and I'm sure I'll mention this once we get to another film down further on my list, but like the way he directs these things is just, it makes the film feel like a dream almost. It's just a super euphoric feeling, like watching them. Like, man, and I'm so glad that he's directing the rest of the Fantastic Beasts movies as well, because those felt really, they were really well directed as well. But Half-Blood Prince, yeah, definitely has a lot of those moments, absolutely. And like, Michael Gambon was so incredible in that role. And rest in peace, Richard Harris, by the way. You were great in the first two, but like, I feel, I don't want to compare the two, but like Michael Gambon, when I looked at him, I was like, I saw Dumbledore. He had the eccentric about him. Like, and Richard Harris definitely did too, on a more like regal sense, but like Michael Gambon like felt more approachable to me in a lot of ways.
Yes, I think I agree with you on that. I always appreciate Richard Harris, but that's very, very well put. I think Richard Harris to me was, that's Dumbledore, the enigma, the like nobody goes near him and he's the highest wizard. And then Michael Gambon, I got that, but also he will come down and talk to you and make you feel at home and bestow some wisdom and do whatever it is. I just felt like, again, we didn't get it because the two films are so similar. But later on, when Dumbledore has a bigger role to play, is when I feel like Michael Gambon is just like, that's Dumbledore. Like it's just him, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's like Dumbledore has a couple of pretty funny moments in this one, like near the beginning of this movie where he picks up Harry at the train station, and he's like, he apparates with Harry away from like his date for the night, and I'm like, man, Dumbledore is the worst wingman of all time. But this is like, it's just like that's Dumbledore right there, though. Like just the extent, like the way he delivers his lines, he just comes off like so like weird and like eccentric and like, man, just so good.
It's a shame. She was pretty, and then Harry's like, yeah. That was good.
And that's another thing that I really appreciate about Half-Blood Prince. Daniel Radcliffe is super good as Harry, like, overall, but, like, in Half-Blood Prince, like, he really understands this point in Harry's arc where he's like, yeah, I get it. Life sucks. You know?
Life sucks, and the most I can deal with it is just keep moving forward. But, and that's kind of the cool thing about it, that it's like, well, okay, well, Snape is not the potions guy. Well, you know, he's doing really good, and things are starting to change in a way compared to what happened in Order of the Phoenix. Like, it's like, all right, well, he's making the best out of it, and all of a sudden when he realizes that, like, yeah, but, like, unfortunately the world that you know is, in a way, cursed by something far bigger, and your number one source of connection to this world, in a way, dies. And it's like, you see the murder happen, and, it's so... That scene also in the astronomy tower is like, holy crap, you know, like Snape and Bellatrix and Tom Riddle, Draco Malfoy. Like when you see it, Tom Felton, and you see it and he falls and the way that the music crescendos and then stops and then he whispers, Snape, please. And then it's just quiet, and then the delivery by Alan Rickman, it's like it always hits me every time I watch that film. I know what's gonna happen, but it always hits me. The delivery is on point, the music, and he dies, and the kids lift their wands, and so good.
Alan Rickman, rest in peace. Snape is one of my favorite characters in the whole thing, and like I feel like he got a lot of really great moments to shine in Half-Blood Prince. Also, I mean, he is the title character in a lot of ways, but
right,
like it's revealed he's the title character rather. But like, I mean, the unbreakable vow at the beginning that he has with Narcissa Malfoy is a really cool moment. Like how he's defending Draco, and like I really enjoyed that bathroom duel also with Harry and Draco, where he uses Sectum Sempra on him, and I'm like, Draco should be dead from blood loss, but like, thank God Snape was there to freaking like. But anyway, I mean, yeah, it's all about suspending disbelief. But but
good.
My number 4, fittingly enough, is the 4th movie in the franchise, Goblet of Fire.
Ooh,
yeah. So I have
it. Big change.
Yeah, big change. Yeah, Goblet of Fire. So. Again, in a lot of ways, this movie was extremely nostalgic for me. I unfortunately did not get a chance to see this movie in the theaters, and I was devastated that I couldn't make it. But I mean, like, first chance they got, my parents bought the DVD, and we all watched it. And I remember just being so in awe by that movie. And I remember it played on repeat at my grandparents' house when I was there one night. Like, you know, like watching that Voldemort reemergence, like it was a big deal in and of itself because, like, oh my God, here's the main villain of the movies. You know, there he is, you know, in human form finally. Like watching that scene, like in my grandparents' huge like study like room, I was just like, man, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like how, oh man, just that reveal. And also, like, I really loved the action in Goblet of Fire. I feel like at one
Mhm.
point, I feel like this was actually my favorite of the franchise, if I really had to think about it. But like, it's not at the top, obviously. Now, like, I definitely see the flaws with it, and we definitely talked
Mhm.
about it a lot earlier. But like, yeah, you know, Bo Battens comes in and they're like not a threat at all. Durmstrang comes in and they get the biggest freaking WrestleMania entrance I've ever seen. You know, they're like throwing fire everywhere. It's just like spitting fire. There's Victor Crumb with the principal, and I'm like, yep, they're a legit threat. I can see them winning, but you know, I figured it was
Yeah.
kind of figuring whose name was on the title. I kind of figured one of the Hogwarts people was going to win, and that's another thing. Robert Pattinson as Cedric Diggory, like this was
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah, it was before he ever did Twilight, and like, thank God he's made up for that franchise. I'll just say that. But like, you know, since then, but a lot of people tend to forget that Robert Pattinson was a part of the Harry Potter movies, and like
Mhm.
seeing Cedric Diggory die, even though we had just met him, like as a kid, that was a
Yeah.
big deal for me. It traumatized me, actually. I was like, so these characters are not invincible. Like I saw the Harry Potter characters as like superheroes almost
Yeah.
growing up. And like seeing Cedric die, I was just like,
And also the way that that scene plays out has always been in my head because you know they go in the maze and everything's dark and they go to the graveyard and then they bring back Voldemort and it's just so amazing, like you know Voldemort taunting Harry. Like I said, after that moment, like that moment is one of my favorites in the entire franchise. You know, don't do anything. He's mine to finish. Like it's like holy crap. You know, Harry is like you know they're the connecting of the Phoenix Force and stuff.
yeah,
But when they go back to Hogwarts, when they use the port key, and then all of a sudden they play the ba ba da ba ba, and they play the music again, it's like I remember being like,
yeah.
damn, they did that. Like, you know, visually again, they played the score or they played the band being like, yay, you guys made it. And it's like, you guys don't know what just happened.
Real quick, yeah, reversal. And that's another thing also. Like this is something that really bugs me on the rewatch. So you have the first task and the second task, which are super fun to watch. The third task, which is in the maze from The Shining, you have all four champions go in, and then, like, you see, after Harry goes in and Mad Eye gives him the direction, you know, like, where the cup is, it's not really Mad Eye, it's Barty Crouch Jr. and the Polyjuice Potion, but, like, you
Right.
see the hedge close around Harry, and for us as the viewers, the maze part is really cool. But imagine being, like, Hermione and Ron at that point and watching
Thank
it
you.
as a spectator. It's almost like you're going
Thank
to
you.
it's almost like you're going to WrestleMania and like you have the entrance right here perfectly fine, but over the ring you just have this steel dome over it and you're just sitting there like, man, I hope the action's good in there. I can't see a damn thing, but
I hope everything works out for them. Yeah, I thank
yeah.
you. Thank you for saying that because I have always said that. Like, so they just sit there and wait until somebody comes back. Like,
Yep.
okay, like that seems very boring. And then it's like, okay, so even if the cup wasn't a port key, do they just like grab it and they come back and they just appear with a cup? Like, there you go.
Yep.
Like, and I don't know, it's like so weird.
The audience doesn't get screens to watch along with us. They don't even get to see the duel either. It's like you just wait for somebody to come out of the maze with the cup, and it's like I would hate to be an audience member over there. Like I get that there's probably like there's finals. I mean, you could study instead of going to the third task, but like I don't know. It's that part was just weird.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of funny, like Goblet of Fire definitely has a lot of funny moments too regarding the Yule Ball. This is like something that they were treading. They were definitely treading a fine line with like, you know, into the soap opera territory almost, but they very wisely played all the dance stuff for comedy. Like, you know, Ron going in
Okay.
and dancing with McGonagall. It's like Ron really does not want to do it, and like the twins are just sitting there, like they're enjoying the hell out of it. Like, you know, it's like very, very smart of them to not go the serious route with it. Instead, play it for humor.
And
You know.
I have it lower, but I think the parts, because that's the thing. I think if you were to ask me when I was younger, I think Goblet of Fire was always up high on my list because it was the like dragons and things and creatures and puzzles and this and the that and the funny and the girl and the this, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a bing bang boom for everything. But then as I got older, it's kind of like, yeah, I appreciate all that, but I'm actually more into character, which is why I really love Goblet of Fire, because I get a lot more of the other touches where it's like, yeah, like Ron is like dealing with the reality of like, I want to fit in, but my status doesn't allow me to, so I have to wear my old Aunt Tessie's dress. Oh, and I smell like my Aunt Tessie, you know, like, and then Harry sort of the whole Cho Chang love interest, you know, like it's really sweet, and it's like, oh, how nice. And then like the first confirmation where Hermione's like, if you wanted to ask me to dance, you should have just asked me like everybody else, and I'd be your second
Ron.
choice. Like,
where are you at, homeboy? Where are you at?
Yeah, exactly. But it's sweet because then, you know, the brothers and everybody builds and sort of flourishes. And even Cedric, like, at first you're like, Cedric just seems like another douchey kid because he's like, hey, I told get rid of the buttons. But Harry's like, hey, man, I don't care. I'm just like, this is really serious and we can die. So I'm just going to give you a hint. And, you know, it's like, it's really cool that how kind of develops. And even just that moment alone between Harry and Cedric, which is really the only moment they have together, hits hard because it's like, all right, well, Harry was the one who went out of his way to talk to Cedric. And because of Harry is that Cedric dies, you know? Yeah. And it's like, damn, like that's really powerful stuff. So yeah, I again, still, it's literally at the bottom of my list, but I really, really love Goblet of Fire. I genuinely do.
I do too, yeah. One more point actually about like Harry telling Cedric before we like move on to number 3. That was something that I wish the movie like addressed a little bit better, because Harry goes with Hagrid and Madame Maxime to see the dragons, and that's what Hagrid wanted to tell him. That's the first task. But, you know, like Crumb and Fleur both know as well. So Harry goes and tells Cedric, like, not just for shits and giggles because Cedric's his friend, but like he does it out of fairness. You know, and like Harry doesn't care, like, you know, what other people say about him. Like hearing Harry curse also was kind of traumatizing for me as a kid too. I will say that. But like, but like that's something that the movie does tend to gloss over. It's like Harry tells Cedric about the dragons out of fairness. It's not because he's his friend, but like, so everyone is on an even playing field, you know, and like, that's just who Harry is, and like you gotta really respect him for that. It's just, but
it's sweet. It's sweet. It's a nice. It's touching. It's a touching moment. Again, you know, he didn't want to be put in the situation, but in a Harry Potter fashion, he is, and he has to make the best out of it. You know, and that's Harry Potter for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Man, dude, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. What's your number 3?
Number 3. All right, here we go. So my number 3 is Sorcerer's Stone.
There it is. There it is. All right.
So the Sorcerer's Stone. So that's my number 3 because where I necessarily disagree is I feel that as the first movie, I need all of that setup because I don't want that setup. I don't want that setup in a film that is. For example, I don't want that set up in the third movie and the fourth. I want it in Deathly Hallows because I need it in Deathly Hallows, but I don't want it in any other movie. In this one, I need it. I need to know, what does your scar mean? What does Voldemort mean? Why can't we say his name? Who's this person? Why is a wand with a phoenix core so important? You know what I mean? And you're right. That's why I feel like a lot of people always find it boring because it is all just getting you into the world, you know? But again, this movie was the beginning, and that's where it holds my heart. Right. You know, it's like I love that movie, and I just every single moment. I owned that film in Spanish in a VHS, and then when we came to the US, you know, then I got it as a DVD. But always that movie. Every single moment of that film to me was amazing. The chess, the fly using the broomsticks to fly. introducing all the characters, Neville and Malfoy and Dumbledore, McGonagall, the magic, the essence of it, you know. And I was always a fan of like when Harry first puts on the cloak of invisibility. Like it's like
Yes.
it's again with the practical sort of effects notion. It's like of course that's CG, but what I'm saying is that there's just something so powerful about that it's like I can see the staircase, I can see the portrait of the fat lady, and I can they're dining in this hall. This is a set that was built, you know, and that's where I really praise Christopher Columbus, because in Sorcerer's Stone, this will be talked about in my other list. Christopher Columbus establishes the world, then he lets the world go when Alfonso Cuarón comes and all that stuff, and that's where I always hold the first one higher than Chambers. It feels like, okay, well, we're just trying to retread water on a visual level, you know?
Right.
But it just, Hedwig's theme, Harry Potter's theme, all of these things that, like, at the time were like, oh, this is a fun song, and I'm always going to I'm going to have this on my phone as my ringtone. 15 years later, or however long it's been, it's like, holy crap, like, this is embedded into our culture. You know, Harry and the scar, and then sure enough, that Halloween, I was Harry Potter for Halloween, because it consumed my every soul, because it was just the most amazing thing ever, and I loved every piece of it. And again, I will watch it. I will watch the first film because it's the first movie, but it's also like, okay, but like I've seen it enough times that I can easily just move on to the next one, because it really is just a lot of exposition. But it's also so sweet, because to me, the one moment that always makes me ball up and start to cry is when Hagrid gives Harry the book, the photo.
Oh, yeah. And freaking Harry hugging Hagrid, like, it's just, I don't know what it is about hugging Hagrid, but, like, I always seem to tear up around that point, but, like, yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on a lot of those facets. Sorcerer's Stone is definitely a very nostalgic film for me as well. I mean, yeah, on a rewatch, I was just kind of sitting there like, yeah, this is a lot of setup, but yeah, the setup is definitely necessary. But another point that I kind of wanted to make about it is that it takes the movie 98 minutes for them to mention the Sorcerer's Stone by name. And to me, it kind of feels long in that regard. Like, they kind of hint at it, like, at the Gringotts portion when Hagrid actually takes it out of Vault 713. But, like, they don't mention it by name until, like, deep into the movie. And I'm like, okay, so now we're finally figuring out what the Sorcerer's Stone is and what it does, you know. But most of it was, like, the thing that I really loved about Sorcerer's Stone is just how welcoming it felt. Like, I wanted to freaking be a wizard, man. I wanted to go to Hogwarts. Like, it's...
and I think that's the part of it, you know, that's the part of it that's the enchanting part. It's that, imagine, you know, heck, let's use Fantastic Beasts for an example. It's the same thing. Like, we loved it, but there's a good amount of people who don't like Fantastic Beasts because they just feel alienated. They just feel like, I'm getting into a world that's already been established and I clearly don't understand it. They're playing their own game by their own rules, and I just don't want to care for it. Whereas in Harry Potter, the first one, you go in just as Harry does. You're in Privet Drive. This is the way that life is. This is the way that life has been. And oh, what's this letter? Or what's the museum experience?
Yeah.
And it's like, when things like that happen, then all of a sudden you're like, cool, I am developing and understanding the world like Harry is. So henceforth, I am connecting to him, and I want to be a wizard. I want to go to that school. I want to do the things that he's doing. And then in something like Fantastic Beasts, you're kind of like, well, I'm not a wizard. I'm not anybody. These are very experienced witches and wizards that are essentially overcoming the thing. What you have to get me on is the story, not the characters, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I feel like they set up Harry in a really, really great way for us to get to, like, root for him in this movie, because I was rooting for Harry from the get-go, mainly because of the Dursleys, who are a really underrated, like, elements of these movies. Richard Griffiths and Fiona Shaw and Harry Melling, who I actually just saw in The Old Guard on Netflix, by the way, as the villain. But, like, the Dursleys are all really, really terrible people. And, like, the way the actors sell it is just, like, the only reason I feel like they're in these movies is to, like, get us to build sympathy for Harry, you know, to make us like feel for him in a way, you know, like he has
Yeah.
terrible guardians, and like they definitely get a lot of their comeuppance and a lot of fun moments. I love the letters sequence, and I love the sequence where they're introduced to Hagrid. Like, oh man,
Oh, it's
that
the best.
at the beach house, like it's not even a beach house. It's like, you know, like almost a lighthouse in a lot of ways. Like only
Its
thing,
own secluded island, basically. Yeah.
yep, to get away from all the letters, but it's Hogwarts, so they'll always find you. But yeah, no, Sorcerer's Stone is definitely great. I definitely understand why it's as high as it is on yours. My number 3, Order of the Phoenix.
Ooh.
Order of the Phoenix is the first movie David Yates directed in the franchise, and I think I mentioned it earlier. His movies just feel so euphoric, like a dream almost, and like the way he plays with like the cinematography and everything in Order of the Phoenix is just so mesmerizing to look at. This, I feel like, is the most underrated movie of the entire franchise. A lot of people I talk to don't really like Order of the Phoenix, and I've never really understood why. On a rewatch, especially in the year 2020, this is a really socially relevant movie. Like, these characters go through a ton. And the ministry is run by Cornelius Fudge, in this case, of course. And he is pretty much in denial about the existence of this threat. He doesn't believe that Voldemort is back. So he just lets them go back to school, and he lets them go like willy-nilly like they have, with restrictions, of course, because Umbridge, the bitch, comes in with her stupid-ass rules and all that stuff. Umbridge is just so unbearable. Imelda Staunton was so good, but like I hated Umbridge, you know, like she did a great job of making me hate her, you know, like, but you kind of see the parallels with 2020. There's a leader. He is made aware of a threat. The threat is identified, but he doesn't care about the threat until he actually sees the threat.
Willingly ignores it.
He willingly ignores it, you know.
And then he won't care.
Yeah, and like, you know, the people that argue against him will freaking suffer. And it's like...
Yeah. It's very prevalent. And, you know, I think that sort of going back on the movie, I adore Order of the Phoenix. To me, and I'll kind of touch up on this when I get to it in my list, but it's when David Yates comes in, and I'll elaborate more on this, but it is when I personally feel that the tone of Harry Potter is found. It is when the Harry Potters that I wanted to see come to light. And that is the type of movies that I wanted to see. And sure enough, Order of the Phoenix, the cinematography, the score, the tone, everything that the characters are sort of facing and the way that he directs the movie, the grand scale of it, when Sirius Black dies gets me every single time when that thing's happen. And then you get something like, and then again, then you get Half-Blood Prince, and then, you know, it's David Yates then becomes the champion of Harry Potter. And that's why I always love Order of the Phoenix. This is the first one that after finishing Goblet of Fire, when you watch Order of the Phoenix, you're like, this movie just feels different and it feels powerful. And I'll get into it in mine, but he does these really, really bold things for a big adventure film, the 5th in the franchise. He does these decisions later on in the film that I am always, always dumbfounded by and always cherish and respect, because it's the start. It's essentially him saying, this is me. This is my audition for the Harry Potter, essentially the champion of Harry Potter. How do you like it? And I love it. And then sure enough, every film that follows, it's like, yeah, well, David Yates has to be the guy to champion this thing because he understands Harry Potter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a very well-crafted movie. And like, yeah, Sirius and Harry's relationship is just one of my favorites in the entire franchise. And like, just to see it come full circle with Bellatrix killing Sirius at the end is just, and like, I feel like that scene was just handled so incredibly well. That whole climax in the Department of Mysteries, it was our first real look at Wizarding War. And it was just so cool to look at. And then Sirius dies. And then, like, I loved David Yates' choice to have Harry's agonizing scream in complete silence.
Amazing.
Like, just like, I heard that the scream was like so like agonizingly painful that, like, you know, they cut it out of the movie, but I feel like he was going to cut it out anyway, cut out the sound.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know,
but that's what I mean.
Yeah, I feel like the punch like hit more there for sure. And like of course you get to the part where Dumbledore and Voldemort have their big battle, and this is just so awesome. It's a spectacle. Even more so than the graveyard sequence in Goblet of Fire. This was that multiplied by 100. I loved it.
Yeah, so good. I'll talk about more of it, but those points that you're bringing up, I will touch upon again because
Absolutely.
the choices he makes are quintessential to the franchise to me.
Totally. And I got to fill up my water real quick. But real quick,
No,
what is your
good? You're good.
what is your number 2, my friend?
Number 2, Prisoner of Azkaban.
Ah, okay. All right. There it is.
Prisoner of Azkaban. Prisoner of Azkaban is it is when, if David Yates to me understands the tone of Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban is when the Harry Potter world begins to take shape. Because if the first 2 films by Chris Columbus are so similar and inside the castle, and yeah, they go out of the castle, don't get me wrong, but it's just so of the same. When Alfonso Cuarón himself says, no, I want them to wear regular clothes because they're teenagers and they're not going to just be in their robes the whole time, that to me made it real. That was somebody who understands, yeah, if I'm in school, don't get me wrong, I like being a wizard, but I'm not wearing my clothes all the time like this, you know? And it was cool because then when you're developing into those elements, it makes it more personable. Harry's not just draped in his cloak the whole time. He's dealing with the fact that he can't go to a simple trip because he doesn't have a parental approval, you know? And it's like, it just, the other thing, it essentially from that point, it just develops into, this is when Harry Potter to me is allowed to explore and to come out of its shell. There's a lot of changes in here. The fat lady portrait gets changed, but it also goes from a long hallway that leads to the fat lady to just up the staircase. It's right there.
I noticed
it
that.
Cuts a lot of the like. What Alfonso Cuarón does is that he cuts a lot of the like, for lack of a better word, he cuts a lot of the filler of what Chris Columbus did to sort of streamline it, but not for the sake of story, but for the sake of world building. Because I feel like in the first movie, I have no idea how to get to the fat lady portrait. But in the Alfonso Cuarón, I'm like, oh yeah, if you just go up the stairs, eventually you'll get to the fat lady. You know, and it just like, everything seems like, yeah, if you just come out this hallway and you walk down this long bridge, you'll eventually get to the weird kind of like standing stones where Hermione punches Ron, or freaking, holy crap, Draco, and then walks down, and then you can get to Hagrid's. Like, I can picture Hogwarts in my head in that film because he gives you a good idea of how the characters can navigate through it. So then it's like, wow, awesome. And then the biggest point to me of Prisoner of Azkaban is John Williams, you're right, he did Hedwig's theme and he did all these things, but the music that you associate with Harry Potter comes from Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah.
You have the Toad song, the Winter song. There's a whole bunch of other different music that, again, John Williams composes, but all of these songs are, apart from the 2 main Harry Potter themes that you know, when you go to somewhere like anywhere and you hear the bum 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 bum, when you hear that, that's Harry Potter. But that's the magic of a score like Star Wars, where I don't have to listen to the main theme. I know that this is from that franchise, and then that's where it's like big, because it's like 3 movies. It's when you can then say, oh, let me listen to the rest of the score, because there's a lot of music that I'm not listening to. You know, and when you go to like the Wizarding World, like the park, that's the music that plays because it's ambient music, and it fills my heart with such elation every time I hear it, because I know what the Harry Potter sound or the music sounds like, the main theme, I get it, but there's something so magical about like, oh, I know this is the Hogsmeade song. Oh, I know this is the song when they play when they arrive at the school. You know, it's like those music choices is when it's like, wow, he really is giving the world more by giving you less at the same time, but also being basically like, this is Hogwarts. You know, there it is.
It is. Yeah, this is the world right here. And you hit the nail right on the head. And Funny enough, my number 2 is Prisoner of Azkaban. This was
Nice.
yeah. So let me just say also, I had a really, really tough time like volleying this one and my number 1 together, like, like which one goes
Same.
where. I really wanted to put Prisoner of Azkaban at number 1, but like there were just things about the other film that I'm sure you guys can deduce which one that is. There were just reasons why that's at number 1 for me. But Prisoner of Azkaban is just such a well-crafted movie, and I'm so happy that Alfonso Cuarón came in and directed this movie. This is probably like, I don't want to say it's like the best directed movie of the bunch because David Yates is incredible, but Alfonso Cuarón does have like, oh, man,
It is universally, and apart from our list, if we just want to talk about people, Prisoner of Azkaban is just universally the most loved Harry Potter film.
It is, yeah.
It is the one because it is most accessible. That's why. It's from all those points. It's the kids are wearing their uniforms, but not really, and it feels bigger and it feels like a little bit more serious. And you got the whole time travel thing and Remus Lupin and the werewolf and the mentors. And when Harry sees what could be his dad, but it's actually just him in the future, like it's so like the themes and the elements are so big and grandiose, but also very prevalent and serious. It's like, and also it's kind of neat because in the first 2 movies, it was like Voldemort is the threat. Where in the third movie, it was like, no, it's actually just somebody else that's connected to Harry. So it almost allowed you to be like, I guess I don't really have to know much about Voldemort. I really just have to know about what's going on with Harry for me to get into this film.
Yeah, like this was a very refreshing change of pace, and it had so many elements to it that I just love. David Thewlis as Lupin, first and foremost, I think is absolutely incredible. Awesome. He was like the first Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher that actually felt like he wanted to help Harry, aside from like Quirrell, and who, we all know how Quirrell turned out, and Gilderoy Lockhart, who turns out to be, just a fake human being. But Lupin actually feels genuine. And, like, he has a lot of really, really amazing, like, sequences in this movie. Like, my personal favorite being the Bogart sequence. That's just really funny, and it's a great message, like, for young kids as well. Like, if you find something scary, like, there are ways to make what's scary funny to overcome that fear. I think it's just a really, really incredible message. And, like, just the way Cuarón, like, crafts this movie is just so gorgeous also. Like the Dementor sequence is just so beautiful to look at. Like I feel like he captured the essence of the Dementors perfectly. There's also he also talks a lot about navigation. We're also introduced to the Marauders map in this movie, which is one of my favorite tools in this entire universe. Like the Weasley twins, of course, introduce it, but Harry is like obsessed with this thing. Almost like he's obsessed with like, social media, trying to like keep up with like, all the happenings that are going on. And like one of my favorite sequences with the Marauders map happens to be when he sees Peter Pettigrew's name walking around.
So good.
And like he learned previously that he was supposed to be dead. But then he goes off in the hallway, and all the portraits are on either side, and they're like, "Turn that light out, boy! What are you doing?" And he's like, "I need to see this, man." And like, if you listen very carefully, like to like the background noise, like as Peter Pettigrew's name gets closer on the map, you hear a rat's feet scurrying along. The movie has so many minute details about it. It does not cheat at all. Similar to Chamber of Secrets, like. It really fine-tunes those details to a T. And, of course, my favorite sequence is, like, pretty much the entire third act where we're introduced to Sirius, the whole Shrieking Shack sequence, and then going back in time. Just, it tries out so many new things with the Harry Potter universe that, like, I never thought I would ever see as a kid. And, like, I was mesmerized with it. It is still one of my favorites in the entire franchise. It's number 2, for sure. Like
my other point to the sort of the navigation thing, one thing that I always point out to anybody when I watch the film is one of my favorite things about the movie that it doesn't happen again in any of the other films is the bluebird that you follow throughout the entire film. And it is a really beautiful way, and this isn't the commentary, but Alfonso talks about that's how he shows the school, and that's how you get where the kids are, where things are located, and where everything is because of this blue bird. and it's because you see the blue bird the entire film. The blue bird goes from
Oh,
the clock tower to
yeah.
Hagrid's hut, from the hut down to the Weeping Willow, and it's like, and also again, the last time we saw the Weeping Willow, yeah,
Whomping Willow, I think.
Whomping
But,
Willow,
you know,
yeah,
it's the same
yeah.
difference.
I was
It's a
like, oh
tree.
boy, got to turn in my Harry Potter card. But in the second movie, the movie we just finished, the Whomping Willow is in the grounds, guarded by bits of the castle, and that's how Harry and Ron park their car next to it. By this third film, it switches, and that's the part. It's like they needed in the third one to make things more like, well, if these are elements that we're going to play with, well, how are we going to play them? How are they going to make sense? And, it's I appreciate it more because of that. So that bird takes you from inside the castle, outside, back inside, from here to there. And all the characters visit all of those places. And
Yeah.
that's where you kind of get like, oh, I know how to get there. And it's cool because then you feel like, again, with the theme of the Marauders map, it feels like, oh, I'm watching it as well and I'm keeping up with where we are. And I don't feel like I have to take 27 halls to get back to this place. I know that if I walk down this way and get over here, I know where Harry and the gang are located.
Right. Yeah. I never even thought about that bluebird detail until you brought it up. But
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're referring to. Like I
Mhm.
saw that bluebird multiple times on the rewatch, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why Quadon decided to put that in. But hey, there you go. That's yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
essentially just acts as a way of like letting the audience know what the world looks like with music and accompaniment and a bit of like cuteness to it, but also like so you can see like where's the castle and where is everything located.
Of course, yeah, that's a really great point. But Prisoner of Azkaban, definitely a great movie. Man, 2 times on our countdown, we've had the same exact film at the same exact spot.
Yeah.
But I'm sure people have done process of elimination up to this point. Here it is. Let's talk about our number ones.
Number one, I have Order of the Phoenix.
There it is. There it is.
Order of the Phoenix. Because this is the film that becomes Harry Potter. Harry Potter was always great and awesome. The first, and it's weird to say because it's the fifth film. And it's like, don't get me wrong, the film learns its identity, but I just feel that David Yates in particular is what I'm referring to. He, at this point, is, hey, this is what the world looks like. These are the tones that we're playing with. Melancholy for this one, and then the cinematography, the camera setups. So the whole film is blue because Harry's feeling blue, again, very sort of superficial, but it is very dictating of a personal struggle that Harry's facing. Then it develops into well, that's the blue hue from the actual prophecy, and it's like, wow, holy crap, yeah, it all kind of fits and molds together. But then when he's in the ministry and the shot is literally split in half and Harry's sitting by himself and the entire ministry sitting on the other side, it plays on the themes of loneliness and feeling as the outside, Dumbledore always shutting him out, his friends having conversations away from him, and the whole duality of Harry thinking that he's slowly turning into Voldemort, but he can't explain it, all of that stuff. And then what kicks it for me is the final battle, because this is the one battle where that entire fight between Voldemort and Dumbledore, there is no score. There's no score.
Yep.
It is all sound design. And it is my favorite thing because you're sitting there, especially you look at something like Deathly Hallows or hell, even the last one, when you're seeing these big moments happen, you're like, this is quiet. I'm in this hallway hearing magic happen.
Wow.
And it's like when he does that, that's when it's like he gets it. He gets what a wand sounds like when you're casting this kind of spell. What does fire raging snakes sound like, and water engulfing it sound like? Those elements are so good. And then I always love when Harry gets possessed by Voldemort. That's when the score kicks in, and it's this very beautiful ethereal, coming to a realization, and he's having a conversation with himself and the world freezes, and it's just, again, it's touches of this is happening. And then that's the same glass dust that engulfs Voldemort when Cornelius Fudge comes out, and then it's like, holy crap. And then again, One of my favorite musical pieces is the fight that the Death Eaters and the Order of the Phoenix have, and
Yeah.
it's like holy crap. And, again, if we're sort of talking about book, I know because Order of the Phoenix book is not my favorite book, but it's my favorite movie, and it's because in Order of the Phoenix, the book, I felt like there was a lot of things that happened in the ministry, and this is me personally. For example, my girlfriend feels completely different on this point, but like the movie to me cuts where it needs to and makes it very about like, listen, there's a lot of things that were in the ministry, and we can get into that all day, but what are we really here for? We're here for the prophecy, and that's, to me, I've always like, I love that moment. And if I could have one scene, it would probably be the one explaining how Neville's parents come into effect and how he's actually a chosen one technically, but it just happened to fall upon Harry.
Yeah.
But it's like, just again, it's the music, it's the touch, it's the direction, the cinematography, the elements that are played with, the performances from everybody, and then of course, freaking, oh my goodness, Sirius Black.
Yes.
Sirius Black just, steals the show. Just you go from like 2 movies ago, knowing what he was and how he started, that eccentric, so now he's controlled. There's even that moment in the house in Grimmauld Place when he's looking at the tapestry and Harry leaves, and it's just a shot of him looking at it, seeing like my family that I never talked to again, that I completely ostracized me and left me. It's like, it's such a deep moment, and that's where I feel like David Yates essentially stamped his foot and said, I'm the one who's going to be able to take this franchise places. And sure enough, it did, because then Half-Blood Prince was like mind-bogglingly amazing, and then the Deathly Hallows series were just back to just like big picture craziness, and then sure enough, we have what we have with Fantastic Beasts. But Order of the Phoenix, again, could have swapped them out with Prisoner of Azkaban, because I feel like they both feel that they're the films that tell me that the Harry Potter franchise is in good hands in a way. They all are. Even a Mike Newell film, I know it is, but it's when I feel that Harry Potter stamps itself, and I will never forget the poster with Harry in the middle and the Order of the Phoenix next to him, and all of it was just so epic.
One thing, I love that fight scene for sure, and like the score of the Dumbledore Voldemort duel was essentially like, all the magic that they're creating, and no music behind it. Like, I feel like editors would be really tempted to put a musical score there, but they didn't, and it's really, really ingenious filmmaking. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier when I talked about Order of the Phoenix that I find really inspiring is that we actually get to see Harry teach in this movie. Like, it's so cool. There's no other way to fight, Umbridge, really, without getting yourself into trouble. So they formed this secret society, Dumbledore's Army, and, they train in the Room of Requirement, and it's all a lot of fun. He teaches them Patronus spells. Like, I will admit, though, like, looking at that, I was like, Lupin said that a Patronus charm was, like, a really challenging thing. And and Harry teaches like every single one of them, and they pull it off like no problem. And I'm just like, okay.
And I think that's also the magic of it, though. And actually, I need to correct myself. The music that I use as an example for Prisoner of Azkaban is actually the song for the Order of the Phoenix. That's one. But there are other songs within Prisoner of Azkaban that are still quintessential. But like that song that plays there. But that's a good point, because like Prisoner of Azkaban was all about Harry, like. You don't know how to tune into this greater evil and how you're supposed to combat it. And then you see a whole room of people just like doing it. And it's like, wow, like Harry really is something special. He can get across to people and really make them feel that, whatever it is that you might be going through, not only have I gone through with it, but I will give you all of the tools to do that. It's just so beautiful. And then Umbridge, and to your point about Umbridge, like, I think that's the point. It's like there isn't a single person that loves her, but that's the point. It's like her performance is so horrible, or so perfect, that you can't help but hate her, right? And it's good. It speaks to all of it.
it's so poetic also, like when the centaurs take Umbridge away, and like Umbridge is like to Harry, tell them I did nothing wrong, and then Harry's like, I'm sorry, Professor, I must not tell lies.
Yeah,
It's genius writing. It's so poetic, like to end
yeah,
Umbridge's story that way in Order of the Phoenix. But like, I definitely see why it's your number one.
so good. I
It's
love it.
yeah, definitely great. But you guys have probably guessed what my number one is. Definitely Hallows Part Two, also directed by David Yates. This is where everything wraps up, and just as everything just explodes in Deathly Hallows Part Two. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I get people's like concerns with like, oh, it's just the second part of a 4-hour movie, but like even then, like just watching part two by itself,
It's
like it
amazing.
still feels like, I watched that DVD like once it came out, like I don't even know how many times. I saw Prisoner of Azkaban, I forgot to mention, 3 times in theaters. I saw Deathly Hallows Part 2 3 times in theaters, opening weekend, and then I think it was still in theaters around September of 2011, and I was like, I want to see it again before it goes, like, because it was
Yeah.
that popular, like it was in theaters for that long. But man, this was just everything about Deathly Hallows Part 2 just screams satisfaction.
Mhm.
There are no loose ends left here at all. Like Gringotts, that's a very fun sequence with the dragon. The breeds are escaping me right now,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
like, they escape with the dragon and Voldemort just kills all those poor little goblins, and like
yeah. Oh,
just they go back to Hogwarts, and like, the fiend fire curse in the room of requirement is just like, Malfoy and his idiot friends just gotta do like one more idiotic thing before one of them goes, and it's interesting because in the book it's Crabbe that gets killed by the fire, but I guess what happened is that the actor for Crabbe wasn't available for Deathly Hallows, so they had Goyle do it instead. And I mean, it's
the
still,
he got arrested.
he got arrested. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, that
I think it was like weed
that's
possession.
awkward.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. But yeah,
something like that.
exactly. But yeah, true, exactly. But
It's
and that's the thing. Deathly Hollows Part Two. Like as you're talking about it, yeah, it's like it's boom, 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 but nothing is lost along the way. You know what I
no,
mean? Like they get the chalice, and even then, that's it. Like whereas in Deathly Hollows Part One, you spend so much because that's always the argument that I hear is people saying, "Well, in Deathly Hollows Part One, it takes them an entire movie to just destroy one Horcrux." And then the next one, they just destroy them all willy nilly. But then in my head, I'm like, right, because they don't know how to destroy a Horcrux. And that's the
right.
point.
Yeah.
Once they learn how to do it, then they just piece it together. You know
They
what I
don't
mean? Once it,
Yeah, they don't, sorry to cut you off, but like they don't figure out how to destroy Horcruxes until like at least the third act of part one. So like
exactly.
I don't really see like that argument really. Like once
Yeah.
they figure it out, like, Ron and Hermione go into the Chamber of Secrets, and I'm like, that's a really interesting visual right there, because I always do Harry as the one that went in there. But like you
Yeah.
seeing Ron speak Partle tongue, I was just like, damn,
Cool.
like
Because then it makes sense, you know what I mean? Like they think like once they piece it together, it's like it makes sense. And so that's why in the second one, when they're just taking out a
mhm,
Horcrux after Horcrux, it's completely viable and completely reasonable for them to
mhm.
do it within one movie. But it's the one that they miss, the Nagini. Just that it always escapes them. That's the
Yeah.
what always gets to me. Where it's like to that argument, it's yeah, okay, well, you think everything's going good. Well, Harry's fighting Voldemort right now, and nobody can get near Nagini. Nobody, not a single person. And then
Yeah.
Neville comes out of nowhere. And in that scene, both of the streams of magic go out. You hear the echo of Neville's scream, and it's like
Oh,
that's it, you know? And yeah, it's powerful. And when that movie came out, again, same. I was nonstop watching it. But yeah, out of the two, I think part two of Deathly Hollows is more watchable than part one.
oh yeah.
But I think it's more because it's kind of like the climax and all the pieces are coming together. But it
Absolutely.
is phenomenal, phenomenal film.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, I mean, I've rewatched Deathly Hallows Part 2 specifically, like, because I didn't own the Part 1, like, on DVD or Blu ray until, like, I bought the whole set that's on my shelf. But, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I watched that Part 2, I don't even know how many times on DVD, but, like I said, it's my number one because there's not only just so many callbacks to the rest of the series. You have the Chamber of Secrets, you have the Room of Requirement, you have all that stuff, but like it leaves no loose ends, and there's no doubt in how the series ends. You know, this is it is a nonstop thrill ride from beginning to end. And like, if you're not on that ride, like at the beginning when he's talking to Ollivander, then you're not going to catch up with it. I would like to mention also, on the subject of tying up loose ends, one of my favorite aspects of part 2 is how they handled Snape's death. Like, that's a heartbreaking scene for sure. Now, one of my coworkers actually said that they did not understand exactly that plot twist with Snape being a double agent. And I was like, I don't see what's not to get. It makes perfect sense to me. Like, especially when you go back and rewatch the entire series as a whole. Like, having that knowledge of Snape in the back of your mind as you're watching all of them, it's like everything makes a lot more sense. It's almost like, not to spoil anything, but the ending of The Sixth Sense, you know, like you go back and rewatch The Sixth Sense and like you notice that it doesn't cheat at all. Like every scene still works with the twist in mind.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Snape twist. Like you watch every single movie and it's like every scene still makes sense with Snape, you know, being the double agent. And like it's, and Harry willingly sacrificing himself is just,
the train scene between him and Dumbledore, the realization and Narcissa talking to him and Hagrid, the visual of Hagrid having to carry Harry back, like it all just works. And then that the fury and anger that Ray Fiennes puts into that character when he sees Harry running across the courtyard, it's like how
rage.
Awesome.
Rage on his face was just he could not believe that this kid was still walking. Like, you know, Ray Fiennes, again, phenomenal actors, like all around. You know, part 2 is my favorite, and who can forget the best part of part 2 was the most awkward hug in cinema history. Well done, Draco. Well done.
It was pretty cringe. Cringe. But then it also speaks magic to David Yates, because it's like in that moment it's both cringy, but also like it's not cringy as in like it was an awkward scene. It was like, no, that's the point. It's supposed to be the most awkward, most horrible thing you're witnessing. You know, Draco just completely against his will going in for this, and Voldemort showing some type of affection because he has no concept of love. That
that's very true. Yeah. Like it was often a point, like, you know, it's a joke I make with my girlfriend sometimes, like all the time. It's just like, cause she hates how awkward it is. I'm like, well done, Draco. Like she hates it, but
it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, but that's obviously not like my favorite part of it. But part 2 is like, just everything about it is just, man, I want to go watch it again. Go watch the whole series again, everybody. You know, but wow, man, holy crap, we've been recording for over 2 hours. But
that's what happens with 10 movies.
Oh yeah, 10 movies.
Great conversation nonetheless.
Totally, man. I'm so happy to have brought you on. I mean, this was.
Thanks for having me.
Totally, man. And everybody that's watching this, go subscribe to his channel. He deserves your support as well. Thank you all for watching this far. If you've made it this far, thank you all so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your way out and hit that big thumbs up on your way out also. Yeah, that would mean the world to me. You guys are awesome. We just passed the 200 subscriber mark on the channel, so thank you all so much for that. That's awesome. You guys are the best. Look forward to more fun content like this very soon. Jose, thanks again. This was fun.
Thank you, Zack.
Totally, man. With all that being said, guys, back talk.